Yo, the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush, through the Nick the Gaming King. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, don't hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, don't hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, don't hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, don't to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge. To the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge. To the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge. To the Game Yo, the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush, through the Nick the Gaming King. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, don't hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, don't hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, don't hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. a Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush, gold under the gaming king. CJ, the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world it themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge. Where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight.
We see y'all in there. Yes.
Yeah. Woo. What up?
First of all, fuck this snow.
Yeah.
Seriously.
We got to start the show off with that.
This is drop a bomb for that bullshit.
Yeah, we got more snow.
For that bullshit.
We just got rid of snow.
Just got rid of it.
But anyway,
the streets was just starting to get a nice black
the
shine
last 2
to
days
it.
was actually pretty nice.
It was nice. It was beautiful.
It was nice outside.
42 degrees.
42 was crazy.
Maybe at a late night 38.
No, we got to 45.
Like, it was cool.
Down to
It was
45.
cool. Chat, when I tell you I was so thrilled to actually be able to park straight now.
Yeah, everybody's parked.
We was all parked on the side and shit. Like, I was like, I could park straight. Oh, we good. Nah.
Yeah, nah. We enjoyed that for like a week.
Yeah, a week, a couple of days.
Couple of days, it's crazy.
We didn't get a full 7 days. We got 3 to 4 days.
3 to 4 days. Yup. Anyway, welcome to the Game Lounge, everybody.
What up, y'all? What up, man?
Season 3, episode
17.
Episode 17. I am your host, Golden Crush 200, a.k.a. Mr. 200, and welcome in.
Yes,
Kick
indeed.
it on over to my guy right here.
CJ the DJ coming at y'all with another Game Lounge episode, as well as the queen of the show.
What's going on, chat? It's Melanie Monet.
And the YN of the show.
Number one.
And you always gotta make sure he's number one.
Right. He always gotta say YN number one. Daddy Mac with the slap of the Sonic rings in, so drop us some biddies, drop a bomb for Daddy Mac. He's in the building.
Appreciate you, man.
007, the OG's in the building, drop a bomb.
007.
Drop a bomb for BK Dragon, yeah. Jazz Lee, drop a bomb. Nutty
Jazzy.
Daddy, drop a bomb.
Hey, see Jazzy in a minute. What up, Jazzy?
In a minute. It's a lot of y'all. And then all the lurkers too, drop a bomb for the lurkers.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all.
Yes, indeed.
We got a fire-ass show planned for y'all today.
Uh-huh.
It's fucked up weather, but we're gonna keep it moving.
Right. Daddy Mac said, at work, y'all. Hope y'all have a great show. Thank you, bro. Appreciate you.
You gotta love people that tap in even when they got shit going on, and they still tap in.
They're like, you know what? I fuck with y'all that much.
Yeah.
Then I just want to say, I wanted to pop in and say, hey,
I'm still here.
I'm here.
Appreciate you.
But I gotta go. But I just wanted to say I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Right.
Appreciate
I fuck
you, man.
with that. I fuck with that.
Make your money, bro.
I fuck with that. But anywho,
what we got?
Let's talk a little bit about the stuff we got on because some people didn't see it. So we got our merch on, y'all. We got our merch on.
Game Lounged out.
Oh, I don't get
Game Lounged out. You feel me? Game Lounged out. Oh yeah. Oh, my bad.
Everything.
Yeah. So you know what? This is what we gonna do for Broke Nation. We gonna do this for Broke Nation right here.
We gotta take care of YN.
I got merch.
Yeah. Broke Nation gets some merch over there. I got the shirt too. We gonna.
This nigga got the shirt and the sweater.
Yeah, we gotta make sure we represent. We got the shirts, we got the hats,
everything.
You see the Golden Crust gotta get the golden brim.
Go
You know. I'm just saying.
Shit lit.
Yeah. A little bit of hating because I like your brim a little bit better than mine. But all right.
I went running some errands. I was rocking this right here.
Yeah. As you should. Let the people know what's up. Let the people know what's up. But if you want some of our merch, you guys make sure you log on to our website, GameLounge.live, and you're going to see the shop icon on the right side. But we're going to take a look at that a little bit later. But as we should, get right into the swing of things. Current events. Yes, indeed. So let's do it, y'all. We got current events coming up, y'all. We got some.
QR code on the sleeve.
Yep. We got QR codes right on the sleeve, y'all. So whenever y'all decide,
the first person that I get to scan one, like out in the wild, I'm taking a picture with them.
Yeah, as you should.
I'm taking a picture with them.
As you should. They out in the wild like a Pokemon type.
Yeah.
Out in the ways of
Right.
We spotted Golden Crust.
Right.
And then the wild.
A wild Golden Crust has appeared. Level 200 is too damn funny. Oh my god. My man. So let's get into the swing of things, y'all. We as y'all know, today is Still February, so Black History Month.
Big Brooklyn, Europe.
It's still a thing. Big Brooklyn year. Drop a bomb for Big Brooklyn. It is still Black History Month, so we definitely got to pay some homage to some of our Black History heroes and everything. We all know about the MLKs, the Malcolm X, the Sojourner Truths, all of those good people. We love all of those people, and we thank y'all for paving the way for the civil rights movement. So give it up for them. Give it up for them.
Shout out to the GOATs.
Shout outs to the GOATs. But let's just jump into the swing of things of current events now. I hate that it did that, y'all. I'm so annoyed. Here we go. There we go.
You got it.
We got it. We got it. We got it. We got it. So here we go. As you guys know, Game Lounge is always tapped in. But this time we're going to let my guy Party come and talk to y'all, see what's up. He says, yeah, what's up, Chad? Let's talk about some stuff. What's up, guy? What's up, my man? Look at you looking all suave and spiffy.
Fresh with the black and the,
purple. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Please.
Please, leave me alone.
Please, Krispy Kreme.
The Krispy Kreme glaze.
That's crazy. Can't compliment a brother on Black History. It's crazy.
It be your own family.
It be your own kind.
It be your own kind. It's that bullshit.
You gotta be the YNs, man.
But first, let's pay some homage to some of our fallen icons, because we like to always, put some, bring some notoriety and pay some homage to our fallen soldiers. So let's start off with the GOAT right here, Hideki Soto. Hideki Soto is the father of Sega consoles. He is
Sonic up there too.
You see Sonic up there. He's the GOAT. He's basically the person who painted the pathway for our Sega entertainment needs throughout the 90s up until 2000s, and still was doing stuff to today.
They still got their games running.
Yeah, of course. And so he's the creator of Genesis, Saturn, Dreamcast, the Sega Nomad, a couple things. Pretty much anything Sega related, this man had a part to play in it. So
1950 to 2026, he was living.
Yeah, he was living.
He was living. So definitely want to pay some homage to him. R.I.P. to Hideki Soto, and thank you for all the childhood memories, for sure. For sure. Who else we got up here? Ooh.
We have Dr. Gladys West. So those of you who don't know, Dr. Gladys West is the mathematician who made GPS possible.
Yep. If you thank her for GPS.
Pretty much every day you guys are, if you're drivers, if you take public transportation and you don't know where you're going, you're using GPS. She's the exact reason why you're using those things.
1930 to 2026. She was living.
Yeah, she was living.
I like to see that. Live a full life.
Yes.
And accomplish so much. R.I.P. to her. Passed
away at 95, and thank you for that invention, Miss West. We appreciate you.
Dr.
West, let me say it properly. Thank you, Dr. West. We appreciate you. And, condolences to the families, of course.
Beautiful, too.
Yes. But don't you start. Don't you start Auntie Slayer. Don't you start Auntie Slayer. All right.
I'm just saying.
All right. God damn it. All right. All right. Let's see who else we got. We got James Baer. Is how you pronounce it, because I did look it up. Or James Baer, if it's regular.
Bear.
It's regular. But she is the animator for those 4 cartoons right there, which is Sleeping Beauty, Who Framed Roger Rabbit's Beauty and Abuse, and Mickey Mouse. So she was one of the animators and developers of the back in the days 70s, 80s, 90s.
Wow.
Disney cartoons.
Did she do Mickey Mouse, or did she do that specific movie that's up there?
Well, she did that specific movie. She did some of Mickey Mouse stuff as well, but that specific one, that specific drawing outline is her actual pen. That's her hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mouseketeers.
Mouseketeer. Well, this is not Mouseketeer. That's actually Mickey Mouse Christmas.
That's the old Mickey.
That's the old Mickey Mouse Christmas.
That's that pencil paper drawing.
Yeah.
Like Mouseketeers right here.
Yeah, but see, Mouseketeers is she obviously had to play in Mouseketeers too, because of that pen, Mouseketeers created.
Right.
Gotcha.
So
pioneered.
Yeah, pioneered the whole thing. So she passed away at 91.
She was living too.
Yeah, she was living. Definitely was living. So definitely want to pay some homage to Jane. We're gonna say Bear, but I think it's Baer. See who else we got up here.
Rest in peace to
Oh,
man.
Ricardo Schnetzer.
And we just
That's how you
was talking
pronounce
about
it.
Planet.
Ricardo
You want
Schnetzer.
to know what's crazy? I see a resemblance between him and Captain Planet.
Yes,
I
that
see- you see
jawline.
it?
That
see the
jawline.
resemblance?
Yes.
Oh, he was doing Yorichi? Wow.
So he pretty much is the
Benson?
voice for these people.
Mhm.
The developers for it as well. He did some
Oh,
development
he was
work for them.
Slade?
Right. He was Slade. He was Captain Planet. He was Todd from Fox and the Hound. Amon from Avatar Legends of Korra. Yorichi.
Yeah, Yorichi.
Monkey.
Oh my God.
Benson, Hank, and Tom Cruise, the animated series.
That's
not the
crazy.
real Tom Cruise,
Right,
of
right,
course.
right. I was about to say Tom Cruise got a voice actor.
Yeah.
That's not him.
No. That's him. It's this guy right here,
R.I.P.
Ricardo
Wow.
Schnetzer. So we definitely want to pay some homage to him. Rest in peace, GOAT right there, because these all are icons and GOATs. These are people who are paved the way. So, and
Captain
last but
Planet
not
and shit.
least,
Oh man.
last but not least, we definitely have to put some
man.
riz on our guy, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Rest in power, King, because he is obviously one of the civil rights pioneers, and we definitely got to pay some homage to that because it is Black History Month. So, we're gonna just segue right into that. That's a smooth way to segue into that. Reverend Jesse Jackson.
That boy fresh.
Yeah, that boy is fresh. You saw him, right? You
I
saw him, right?
They looking
Yeah.
fresh.
He looking real fresh. Yep. So right there, and his famous line is "Keep hope alive."
Keep hope alive.
Keep hope
You
alive.
gotta
That's his
keep hope
famous
alive.
thing. Yep. Reverend Jesse Jackson, civil rights pioneer, was a monument. Yes, the font's a little messed up. I don't know why, because the video is speeding through. But I'm just going to say it real quick. Was a monumental American civil rights leader, Baptist minister, and a politician who advanced social justice, economic equality, and voting rights for over 5 decades. He's a protege of Dr. Martin Luther King. He actually marched over in Selma with him as well. He founded the Rainbow Push Coalition, which is fighting for rights for LGBTQ community. So definitely give it up for them. And paved the way for the Black political and participation with historic 1984 to 1988 presidential campaigns. So this guy is a pioneer, a GOAT, a legend, and we will definitely miss him. Definitely did some work with Al Sharpton. We know that for sure. Rev, we gonna miss you. We gonna miss you.
Basically, this guy was dapping Martin Luther King up.
Yep, he sure was.
That was his man.
He was. That's his man's. That's his man's. So yeah. But let's rest in peace, son. But let's get into it, y'all. Let's get right into it.
Anime royalty.
So the question is,
that's funny.
This is anime royalty, Shonen Jump's royalty.
I agree.
Yay or nay?
Yay.
I agree.
I agree.
Goku being the god.
Yeah. Then Naruto is the
king. Where he got Luffy and
the
Bleach.
only thing that's arguable, and I'm not gonna argue it.
Solo leveling.
No. Is One Piece and Naruto. Some people would argue that, but I'm not. I like it how it is.
I like it how it is. Chat. Chat.
Oh, let me see the hold on. Let me see the lower percentage.
The lower percentage?
I was gonna say let me see the bottom. Y'all not getting me.
Easy. You gotta take it easy, brother. Got to be more careful. He was careful today, y'all. He was careful. He was careful.
I said let me see the low percentage.
Yeah. We're not gonna hit you with the Ayo today. No Ayo.
You're not gonna get me.
No Ayo today.
Okay, so you got Saitama.
Yeah.
That's Meliodas. That's Jujutsu Kaisen. Who's the blonde guy over here?
That's
next to Saitama. Is that from Eren?
Yep.
Okay, Attack on Titan, Demon Slayer.
Yep.
Jinwoo. And
who's the green guy?
That's that.
All Might in them.
Yeah.
My Hero Academia.
All Might in them.
All Might in them.
Yeah, BK Jeff, what's up, bro?
What's going on with y'all?
I see you, brother. Drop a bomb for BK Jeff.
I'm with it. This is
so. Can we all can say yay?
Yay! Nobody's arguing that that's where Goku is.
Yeah, Goku belongs there.
He belongs there, and then you got the 3, kids of Goku.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and then you got the grandkids at the bottom.
Yes.
I'm ain't nothing to argue to me.
I have no arguments here. I saw it. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah.
I mean, some people would probably argue.
Dirty Dan, what up?
Dirty Dan, drop a bomb for Dirty Dan.
Dirty Dan, he said anime royalty, yay or nay. You agree?
Yay or nay, Dirty Dan, yay or nay.
Shit.
We got
Koza said, "I'm gonna say Nay
subscribe.
royalty
Oh,
needs
man.
to stand."
Hold on. Appreciate you, Dirty Dan, for the
Oh,
subscribe.
my
Oh,
man.
come on now.
Drop a bomb for Dirty Dan. Now let's hit him with a Superman for sure. 3, 2, 1.
We ain't done that one in a
We ain't
while.
done
That
it
was
in a
that
while.
was a good one.
That was a good
That was
one.
we ain't done that
You
one
need
in a
that
while.
one. You needed that one. That was good. That was good. That was good.
Let me shout him out. Yeah, go ahead, chop it up. Let me shout out my boy Dirty Dan.
He said nay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Koza
Koza
says
says
nay.
nay.
So let's find out why Koza's saying nay. I'm gonna say nay. Royalty needs to stand the test of time. We got anime up there that only been out a year or two.
He got a point. He got a point. He got a
I
point.
agree.
He got a good point.
But those are not the
top layers.
The top layers.
The top layers did the test of time already and is already goaded.
Right.
Yeah. Goku,
okay, the lower percentage is where he's talking about now.
Yeah.
The lower percentage, he's saying that's a little.
He got a point though.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
He has a point.
Okay, so I'll say this, Koza. Nay for which section? The God, the Kings, or the big three as they call
For
it?
the fact that he said stand of time, I'm assuming it's the
Or the lower
the lower tier.
The lower tier.
You're probably thinking about the lower tier.
Top layer is goaded, no argument. Is what
He said who's
top
next?
layer is goaded, no argument.
Look, let me point something out. He said so. Somebody said who's next to Deku. For the fact that you have to ask is a problem.
On the left or on the right?
Ooh.
For the fact that you have to ask.
Yeah.
Even me, I had to ask who's the blonde guy. And why is it not Levi?
Okay.
Because Levi is.
See now Koza kind of started some shit now.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it. That's what we're here for.
Koza kind of started
That's what
some
we're
shit
here
now.
for.
Because I can
But I don't think
argue
that's- I don't think
so
that's
far
Levi.
Jinwoo should not be there.
That's Levi.
He only had 2 seasons.
Okay, so if Jinwoo shouldn't be there, who should?
That's a good question. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Let's unpack. If we had to take out Jinwoo or the guy with the yellow hair that's next to Saitama,
his series is over, so we can consider that they finished their run.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At least they sealed it up.
Right.
Who would replace Jinwoo?
I don't know.
Dirty Dancer and that bum from Seven Deadly Sins.
Whoa.
Damn.
Not Meliodas.
Meliodas.
Hold on now. It is arguable.
It's arguable.
How popular is Seven Deadly Sins?
It's really popular.
It is, but compared to it's arguable as well.
BK Jeff said, "Kid, don't let Kitty hear you talking about."
I know she's not here. I noticed that.
Yeah, right. She's not here yet.
She's not here. When she get here,
When
she get here, we're moving on.
You gonna say, "Hey, Kitty, hey, Kitty."
Don't y'all go snitching when she get here now. Don't y'all go snitching.
Was this picture really named?
He said, "What about guts?"
Anime royalty though. When you found it.
I'm considering it anime royalty.
No, he said, was it made like this?
What about Kenshiro?
I would consider him to be.
What about Yu Yu Hakusho?
I wouldn't consider him royalty.
Not Yu Yu Hakusho.
Why not Yu Yu Hakusho?
Because Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yu Yu Hakusho is good.
It's good, but it's in the
But
shadows.
I wouldn't say it would. Yu Yu Hakusho beats any of the big three.
We're not talking about the big 3.
He's talking about down there at the bottom.
Nobody's arguing with the big 3.
Can we honestly say Yu Yu Hakusho is beating Demon Slayer as
Well,
in
we're talking about Yu Yu Hakusho in 2026, and it's from what, the 90s?
Yeah, it can be talked about all day long.
Will we be comparing Demon Slayer to anything 30 years from now, 15 years from now?
So we would be comparing Yu Yu Hakusho against the big 3 then.
I would argue that Yu Yu Hakusho has better writing than Demon Slayer.
Okay.
Koza said, I'm going to say I'd rather see Spike from Cowboy Bebop.
Cowboy, that show came to my head as well.
I agree.
Cowboy Bebop.
I agree. I think Cowboy Bebop should be there over Leotis.
Whoa.
Over Meliodas?
Meliodas.
I would agree with you.
I think Cowboy Bebop should be there over Meliodas.
I would agree with him.
Koza says, why not Usagi?
Hey, Kitty.
Hey, Kitty.
Hey, Kitty.
So we were just moving on, everybody. We were just getting.
I got my kitty cup and everything.
Yeah, look, check
I
it
got.
out. Yeah.
The world's best mod in the building. Clap a bomb for Kitty.
Yeah,
Go and press the button. Go and press the button.
Yeah. All right. She said, "What is happening?"
They was talking crap.
No. It wasn't Dave.
It was the YN.
It wasn't Dave.
It was the YN. It was this guy.
I was agreeing with Jin.
You the one that said it. You the one.
I was agreeing with
Shut up. You said it. You
My bad, Baldoni. I didn't know you was in here too. What up,
Oh, God.
Baldoni? Trouble
And
for
he got a
Baldoni.
good point though. Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah, where the hell is
See,
Edward,
we got a little bit
Elric,
of a debate
Spike,
with the lower tier
Shinji?
Yeah,
rack right here.
I'll do Full Metal over
But
Millions.
Big Brooklyn
I'll do
said,
Full
would you
Metal.
consider Avatar the last end, but the anime? That's the same thing I be asking.
I would not consider
No.
it anime. I consider it a cartoon,
Where was it made?
an animation
style.
cartoon.
It's anime
Was
style.
it made
It's
on
not
this
anime.
I always
this
thought
side
It was
of the
made
world?
here.
It's anime style cartoon.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not anime, but it's anime.
It's heavily anime inspired, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
It's meant to look like anime.
I always just think that it was
Closer
anime.
said Monet threw us under the bus so quick.
Yeah, mad quick, mad
quick.
quick.
Y'all talking about
She focused.
She said they did
Ask
it
what's
right
happening.
here.
I'm telling.
She's
That is crazy work.
Yo, she did it so
work.
quick that I was like,
quick. Kitty said what was saying. So all right.
Okay,
All right.
okay,
That's,
all right.
So we were having a conversation about the picture you see, Kitty. We said, is this anime royalty? So everybody agrees, obviously, Goku being the god and the big three being the kings or the goats in the middle. But we were saying at the bottom tier that some of the people don't really belong there, being that they only had maybe 2 seasons. And your guy Jin Woo Ning did get brought up about not really being down there because
She said, I don't know who said it.
it wasn't me who brought
It
that
wasn't
up.
me either.
But I was
agreeing
putting
with
it out that they were saying Jin Woo.
I was agreeing.
They were saying Jin Woo shouldn't belong with anime royalty.
I just thought on my end.
Right.
They're trying to put it on me hard body.
Whoa,
Oh
hey.
wait, Kitty said, why is he down there? Where do you think he's supposed to be?
Whoa. Hey,
Up there with those 3?
Wait
Yeah,
a
he can't
minute.
go
up there where?
Don't get me wrong, I love the anime. I do.
What?
We're arguing if he even belongs
Actually,
there.
Kitty, I love the anime so much. I just binge
Cozy
watched
said
it all
it was
last
me.
night.
I'm standing on business.
Yeah.
Come on, Barbara. Cozy, I'm standing on business.
Cozy don't give a fuck.
Up with Goku? Oh!
Wow.
Over Naruto, Luffy, and Ichigo? Damn.
Wow. She surpassed niggas who had seasons for 20 plus years.
Yo!
And
Wow.
still going.
What's going on?
Yeah, still going.
Like trying to get to the one piece
Luffy
before I
got,
die at
Luffy
this
got,
point. You
Luffy
know
got
I'm
what,
saying?
800 plus episodes?
Listen,
1,000 episodes?
1,000 plus.
Over 1,000.
Over
Damn.
1,000. Over
Like
1,000.
1,500.
Jesus
To be honest.
Christ, bro.
Go
Luffy
down,
got
it's
too
still
much going
chilling.
on.
We ain't even at the end yet.
Nah.
He said never, damn.
Up with Goku is crazy.
Baldoni said never. I agree, bro. He could never be up
You
there.
ain't even watch it yet.
Go no, fuck that.
Yeah.
I will argue that
You ain't
shit.
even watch it
I
yet,
will
like
argue-
Kitty
I
said.
don't give a goddamn, baby.
Now, I'll agree if she would have said, like, if this was, like, the newer generation anime, like, started from,
We
like,
could-
2012, maybe.
If I
yeah.
really sit there and think about it, you could argue DB Slayer really could argue them they ass off the list too.
Whoa.
Nah.
It's popular, but it ain't that deep.
It made a
No,
lot.
it is deep.
It's a big
It's
thing.
real
It's
deep.
a
It
big
ain't that deep to
thing.
me,
They
because
got
I
a
don't
lot
really
of
care for
sales.
Demon
It's deep.
They made they beat a lot of box office shit, bro.
Yeah,
What's
they
up?
did. Mugen
We
Train
talking
beat,
about goaded.
I get you. It's
No,
in
that's
the,
not goated.
That's not standing the test of
That's not
time
goated.
yet. It's still in its
That's goated?
popularity.
but that's what the bottom tier is for. The still in being the popularity.
Yeah, they are. They are.
Not the three. Not the
I would
the
say
3 kings.
The solid picks at the lower tier that's not going anywhere. Jujutsu Kaisen.
Mm.
Okay.
I wouldn't argue My Hero Academy either.
I mean,
I'm not arguing.
I-
that.
What about One Punch Man?
Hold
One
on.
Punch Man
Hold
can
on.
actually-
Hold on. Those 2 are staying. Attack on Titan, I'm gonna leave it.
Mhm.
Attack on
I
Titan,
got
I'ma
some
leave it.
respect
Titan,
for it.
I'm gonna leave it.
I don't think that's a
I
Attack
got
on
my
Titan.
issues with it,
I got respect for
but
it.
I'm gonna leave it. Those 3, I'm gonna leave.
I don't think that's Attack on Titan.
Saitama, I honestly don't really care too much for it, but I'm not gonna argue too much against it either.
Right.
Chat talking. She said, "Who
Wait,
made
let me
this
see.
pick?"
Who made this? It wasn't me who made this pick,
Yo,
but
TY,
I
what
did
up?
come across it. I don't know who made it, but I came across it and said this would be a good thing to talk to you guys
Cole
about.
said, "I'd rather see Dingy up there than Demon Slayer."
He said, but even Denji don't belong on royalty. You could argue Demon Slayer off that list too. I'm being honest.
I get it.
It's a debate. I'm not saying that they don't. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But they're arguable.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
I mean, it was just a conversation of yay or nay. So I said everybody pretty much said yay here, but you saying nay now.
I'm not saying nay now,
Okay.
because watch me whip. You know?
Watch you nay nay. Watch you whip. Watch you nay nay.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I couldn't resist. I couldn't.
Oh
So,
man.
it's a
Yeah,
special
that's not
from
Attack
the
on Titan. That's definite. That's Light Yagami.
That's not even Attack on Titan. That's a
That's
problem
like-
that we
that's
don't
like-
know these
That's
niggas.
like Yagami.
Yeah,
That's actually a problem too.
I guess the
Like, it was
person,
ringing in my head.
the person who did this, I guess, should have put names. But I guess
'Cause
maybe
Attack
I
on
could have
Titan,
did names.
They felt like you're
I'm
supposed to
saying,
know.
why is it not Aaron or Levi?
I knew that was light.
You get what I'm
Someone said
saying?
that's
I get
light. That's not
Edward
Aaron.
Elric
Not
to have been
Aaron.
there. The
Right.
my shit.
I knew I wasn't tripping. I was like, wait a minute.
What is
that
it called?
was like-
Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist.
Full Metal Alchemist.
I
right.
think that should have been there for sure.
But Aaron
Yeah,
Yeager is the Titan from Attack on Titan.
Yeah.
Levi is the other star guy.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm like, why would it not be? But it looks like the other blonde nigga from the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Could be.
it's Light Yagami. That's from Death Note.
Oh.
I'm a little confused
that's
now.
not-
That's Light from Death Note
Yeah.
next to Saitama.
So here, okay. So
Okay.
boom, watch this.
I know it was
Watch
tripping.
this. Watch this. Since there's no representation for Attack on Titan
That's
up
like,
there,
fucking anime.
somebody has to go. Who we gonna remove from that bottom tier
Meliodas.
to make room for
Over
Attack on
Light?
Titan?
Meliodas.
Over Light? Get the fuck out of here.
Now I want to know
Get the fuck out of here.
Light belongs.
Hell no.
Light belongs.
which one is Light.
Hell no.
Light is the one next to
in
Saitama.
between Saitama and
The blonde nigga?
Yeah.
Yes, that's Light.
That's
not-
Light.
And what show is that again?
Death Note.
Death
See,
Note.
it's a problem. I don't give a fuck. See, that's the problem.
He says
That's the big problem for me. I would
Cola
argue.
said light belongs.
Get the fuck out of here.
No, wait. You see, I don't watch another character,
Mhm.
but I'm not slow to the lore or the popularity.
Mhm.
I would actually argue Attack on Titan should either replace.
You-
I'm gonna say Demon Slayer,
What?
Over
not Demon
everybody
Slayer.
else.
Not Demon Slayer. I mean Jinwoo.
Wow.
Oh.
It's only 2 seasons. I have to be fair.
Ooh, kitty.
There's 2
Kitty.
seasons. It's fire.
That's Light. That's Light, Kitty. That's Light. Look at what he's wearing. It already screams Death Note. Remember, all of them wear like, that formal
He said
wear.
kick Attack on Titan off with Jinwoo and out Ash Ketchum.
Put Ash Ketchum up there? Yeah.
Pokemon.
I agree. I
Okay.
agree.
Pokemon.
Ash Ketchum, yeah.
Okay.
Pokemon.
I agree.
Why is Pokemon not up there?
I get it. I get.
Because
Well,
I feel like-
hold your arguments because we just want to say yay or nay for this
Right.
because I got more conversations.
Now I'm confused. I don't know. I'm yay for the upper guys.
Okay.
I'm nay for the lower tier.
Okay.
So now I'm confused.
All right. All right.
You get what I'm saying?
I got more. So
Okay.
let's not dwell too much on it. Some of us say yay.
Some of us say nay. Okay.
I'd say pretty much everyone says yay to the top, Goku
Right,
being the
right.
god and the big 3 being there.
And see, most
But
people
it's like
say nay on the
Mixie
bottom
saying
now.
nay on some of the people that belong there. So that's fine. So that I got more. Pardon the font because it was supposed to be slides, not a video, but I had to make it a video.
Ooh.
Millennial anime Mount Rushmore.
Nope.
This is from 90s
Nope.
to 2000
I agree.
Nope.
anime.
Nope.
I'm not talking about 2010,
Nope.
2020.
Nope.
This is 90s
Nope.
to 2000s
Nope.
Who's
millennials,
your
people who were born
Nope.
1985
Nope.
up to I
Nope.
guess 2005.
Nope.
Four? The fourth? Ooh.
Nope.
I agree, though.
Yay or nay?
Yay.
Nope. You-
Question is yay or nay
Nope.
as the first 3.
Yay.
Nope.
Yay.
Yu-Gi-Oh don't belong. up there.
Dragon Ball is 80, so that's why I said 1985. But Dragon Ball is 80, but Dragon Ball Z
Right, no, we
is
got you.
90s.
We got you.
And most people can go watching Dragon Ball series without ever watching Dragon Ball and know what happened.
Yay. I agree.
So,
But then who?
I would-
90s anime, 90s to 2000s millennial anime Mount Rushmore.
I would actually.
Yay or nay for these 3? That's the question first.
I say 1 nay, because Yu-Gi-Oh don't belong up there.
Yugi don't belong up there.
No, and
Okay.
2, I would still put Dragon Ball in the 80s category. It's a bit unfair because it's just gonna be solid win. I would put him in the 80s category.
This is
But-
Mount Rushmore we put in there.
Okay, so I would say
you know how Mount Rushmore is. It's the 4
No,
goats,
I
the
got you.
4
I got
presidents.
you.
Right.
I got
so
you.
this will be your
But I would
Mount
say
Rushmore.
Yu-Gi-Oh don't belong up there.
Okay. For your millennial anime.
No,
Crazy.
Okay.
because what year did Naruto and
Naruto
One Piece
is
start? That's late 90s. One is 1999. Why isn't that up there? It's more popular than Yu-Gi-Oh by far, and still going now, just like Dragon Ball.
I hear you.
Pokemon is still going now.
But but from 90s to 2000, it wasn't more popular than Yu-Gi-Oh.
It
wasn't.
You can't tell me that. You don't know how much mangas are being sold. You don't know what the viewership was like in the 90s. You only know Yu-Gi-Oh because it's popular here in your face.
Well, Yu-Gi-Oh started in Japan, and it was popular over there, and they still are popular with their cards. And you do have people who are trading cards.
You're not telling me from 1999, One Piece has been going on and been consecutively one of the most popular anime and manga in history.
One Piece been going on since 1999. I don't
1999
remember that.
or 2000. That would make it in this category of list. One Piece is not a 80s, it's 90s. 90s anything is on this list. So is Naruto. Those not 80s, that's 90s.
It was 99.
Exactly. I think Naruto is 2000 or 2001.
Naruto, I remember it was 2000.
You're not telling me that Yugi is beating any one of those two. No.
Beating what?
No.
One Piece or what?
I would put One Piece or Naruto up there before Yu-Gi-Oh any day of the week.
Okay. You say nay. Koza says nay. Remove Yugi, add Naruto, and my fourth is Ichigo.
That's what I'm saying.
As the Mount Rushmore. Okay.
Ichigo or Naruto?
As a millennium, remember, they were talking about 90s to 2000s.
I would put, my full answer would be move Yugi.
Okay.
Add Naruto. Fourth will be One Piece.
Fourth would be One Piece.
Yep.
Okay.
That would be my, for that era.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so glad nobody not moving my.
I like this.
I'm so glad.
I like this.
So who would you add?
I would add Sailor Moon.
That's 80s.
Oh yeah.
But she came out in the 80s, but it was mid 80s, moving into the 90s.
Mid 80s,
not
bro.
90s,
That's
though.
80s,
It's not
bro.
90s.
If she
You
came
can't
out
do
in the mid 80s, that's 80s.
Yeah, you can't do that if it's 80s or 90s.
That's an 80s cartoon, bro.
But remember, the thing is millennial anime Mount Rushmore, not the date it came out. You're a millennial. When were you watching these?
90s and 100s then. So what we doing?
I wouldn't put Sailor Moon up there. That's not
So
for
we
that
start
era.
from 90s or we start from?
I agree with this guy. I like this. This is fire.
What she came out?
Sailor Moon debuted, premiered 1992.
Okay,
so she fits 90s. In this.
She does. Yeah. Just by date she fits, but I still wouldn't put her up there.
I would put her up there for the simple fact of it's the millennial anime Mount Rushmore. You were when TV was being shown on whether it be WB11, UPN 9, Fox 5, any of those channels. One of these three niggas was up there, and including her. That's why I would say that.
That's a fact. She was on TV too, but for me personally, no.
If we include in the 80s, we're knocking at least two of them off, right? Because the 80s.
Well, see,
so
debuted in 92.
Reason why when I say 80s, I mean you were born you yourself. You were born 1989, 1988, 1985.
But we was born in 92, so we couldn't even say much.
We were born in 92, but we were watching these shits. When we, as kids growing up, we had cereal bowls with Goku, with Ash, with Yugi. We had them shits. Let's not play these games here.
No, I remember Yugi.
And like I just said, all three of these people that I just said were either on WB, UPN 9, Fox 5. They were on Cartoon Network. They were on numerous shit.
I wouldn't put Sailor Moon up there. For me.
For Sailor Moon, I would say Sailor Moon. And the reason why I would say Sailor Moon, because even when you look at it,
nah.
No, she don't fit.
That last two.
Even when you
period.
look at it,
I only agree with the first two. Period. Only the first two.
Oh, you don't think
some way, somehow, Naruto should be up there. Period. You can want to argue One Piece. Some way, somehow, Naruto should be up there.
Yeah, Naruto.
That's it. I feel like these four, in my opinion,
I feel like
these four were the most influential through the 90s to 2000.
Sailor Moon belongs, but are we going about when the manga came out, when the shows came out, when they were popular? Right. It's different.
So, okay. We're going to say... You said Sailor Moon...
He said we got to set a standard.
Right.
You got to set a standard. The show...
Because there's different timeline for different properties of the production.
I'm saying watching.
No, I understand what you're saying.
I'm not
I understand what you're saying.
We can say all day that Dragon Ball don't belong there because even though it debuted 1980 whatever, they were writing that shit like 79. Like let's be honest here. These people were thinking about it. They were in college writing this shit in the late 70s, early 80s.
I would argue too much because it was influential across even up till now, which is fine.
Right. So
Pokemon as well.
But again, 90s to 2000s.
No, I agree with you.
And so this is what was on TV.
I'm just not going to agree with that last two. And if you want to say drag, the first one I think comes off that list, Yu-Gi-Oh! Get the fuck out of here. And I love that show.
Papa Chompson will drop a bomb for Papa Chomp. He says it right there. That list,
yes,
that's
anime,
the list
not manga.
right there. Naruto and One Piece didn't become popular till the 2000s, which is very true. I mean, Naruto came out, or One Piece came out 99.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Came out in the 90s, isn't it?
Yu-Gi came out 96, I think. I remember Googling it.
Yeah, about like,
yeah, so that sounds about right.
Like 96 or something.
I didn't like Yu-Gi-Oh!
It was cool. It was cool though. It was fine.
I didn't care about Yu-Gi-Oh! After the
Wasn't
first
Dark
generation.
He said 99.
99. Yeah, get the fuck out of here.
That's 2000s basically.
98.
98.
The first episode debuted in Japan 98, so in America 99.
That's damn near 2000.
That's 2000 though, right?
No, that's exactly
That's
the
90.
time frame because we were 8 years. Well, in my case, I was 8 years old, 9 years old watching Yu-Gi-Oh! First episode.
Nah, I dig it. I dig it. Timeline it counts. I just I wouldn't put it up there. No.
I think Naruto good, but Naruto came after the 2000s, so you can't even put Naruto.
Naruto's after.
Yeah, so I said you can't even put him.
That's what I said. Millennial. Not that, you were, because you were born in the 90s, but you still think that Naruto and One Piece was there. That was the other picture was for.
Right.
We already had that conversation. We already know that Naruto, One Piece, and Ichigo are considered the big three. But we're talking about the most influential through the 90s. That's it right there.
I wasn't watching anime.
I don't give a fuck about. I'm not agreeing with Yu-Gi. No. Popular, yeah, nah.
That's crazy, bro.
Nah.
I wasn't a big fan of that, so I can't speak. Sailor Moon, I remember a little bit of it.
Let me see. Koza says, no, we got to that part. We got to that
I
part.
got friends that play Yu-Gi-Oh! Hard.
Nah, Koza said not later than 96. Yes, 98. 98.
Digimon, let me stop.
Whoa.
The funniest thing is, Digimon came out before Pokemon, and Pokemon was the more popular one.
That's crazy.
Because I'm gonna tell you what one answer of why it's so much better. Capture devices. That's the only reason why they're better.
Digimon came out before Pokemon, but Pokemon's the more popular one, and Yu-Gi-Oh's more popular than Digimon.
Because they have capture devices, and because Digi-Evolution, it's only
Papa
for a
Chow said
certain
Pokemon
point.
came out first, though.
No, it didn't.
No.
No.
Wait, when
did
did
not.
Digimon come out?
Depends what we're talking
year
about.
did Digimon
Manga
The
or
show
anime.
releasing,
Yeah, it was Digimon.
Digimon was first releasing. It was 97, I think, for Digimon, and 98 for Pokemon.
No, it's 99.
99 for Pokemon. So 98 for...
That's why I asked you what year did it come out. Because I know Pokemon 99. That's the Orange League.
I never seen any of these shits, only DBZ.
Whoa.
Pokemon was 96, he said.
Papa John never really
was
watched
99.
Pokemon like that. I remember. He's not lying. He never really was like a Pokemon watcher like that. He know the lore. He
came out
know
99
shit.
though.
He never really sat there and watched it like that.
Pokemon came out 99. The Orange League. It was 99.
What, the show?
The anime release date was 98, September 7th in the U.S. 98.
But
For
it came out
Pokemon.
in Japan 2 years earlier.
Pokemon.
But it probably came out in Japan. 2
Japan
years
97.
before. Oh, see, so.
He's always 1 year earlier. in
It's
Japan.
always 1 year earlier.
So they got to translate it, all that shit.
Yeah.
Oh, so was it 99? Damn. Okay.
Papa John said 96
Digimon 99 in the States.
in the States.
But
In Japan.
So we're going by the states here then. We can't keep going.
No, we got to go by the States
Yeah,
when
we
we
gotta go
see
by
shit.
here. We can't keep doing that. We gotta go by here.
I mean, how you want to do that?
all right.
Right.
Okay.
How you wanna do that? I'm
there,
asking, how you want to do that?
you can't
The
go
cartoon's a cartoon. It doesn't, even though it's being vocally translated, they just hired people later. Like
No,
that's
but,
all that is.
So,
Well, what we're saying,
so
we got
Digimon
to
came out
judge from
first?
when they started being popular here.
Right.
That's what
We
I'm
didn't
asking.
know, right?
Okay. So
That's what I'm asking.
But even with it being popular here, let's say Digimon came after Pokemon. It came
Oh, that's
after
not
came
an
here.
argument. It came after,
It came
yeah.
here
So either way, it's
afterwards.
after.
Still didn't beat neither of the four that's
so
up there.
Yeah, but I know
Digimon
that.
come
Digimon is
out
not
here?
as popular.
What year did Digimon come out here?
99, it
And
says.
Pokemon was what?
98.
98.
They came out right at the same time, basically.
Original start here, August 14th, United States released 99.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
And
first
Pokemon
original
was 98.
98.
98.
Same
yeah.
year, basically.
Right.
Same shit. It's the same shit.
But the releasing of Digimon was 98.
What year was the
Japanese.
Digimon manga? And I'm just asking for knowledge.
Yeah. Right,
Because
but
I think
that's it too.
Digimon
The
beat them
manga's-
to something. I'm just want to know.
Digimon
the manga.
manga. I'm sorry. Digimon manga release date. Come on, don't be a bitch. Manga series is 2000. That's
That's
wait. No.
2000?
Debuted in Japan 97.
97.
Oh,
When
US
did
2000.
Pokemon manga start?
Early, probably.
You said 97, right?
Shit's so
Yeah.
close together.
Okay.
Yeah, they
No, yeah, they're very neck and
they're
neck.
very neck and
I
neck.
just want to know it because
Japan what?
Pokemon manga 2000.
Here?
I
or
knew
Japan?
Digimon beat them to something.
That's here or Japan?
Pokemon manga was 2000, but the word Pocket Monster in Japanese
I
was
knew
97.
my brain was
See, what
fucking
the
with
hell?
something because I knew.
So it's the
So
same
that's what it
thing.
is. Digimon beat them to manga.
Here.
To manga.
To manga
but,
here,
but
but
Pokemon
over
beat them
there.
to anime.
Right.
Oh, wow.
That's what it was. That's what it was. But either way,
Either way.
point remains. I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
Just wanted to refresh my memory.
I
still say nay. I'm sticking to my
I'm saying yay.
Okay.
Y'all too?
Nay.
Say nay?
Only because I didn't watch Yu-Gi-Oh like that. I didn't.
I did.
You know I didn't care.
I
for
did. Yu-Gi-Oh was
like
big.
that.
Okay,
I love
so
Yu-Gi-Oh.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Who would you change Yu-Gi for?
I can't even say Naruto because he came after the 2000s. So
That this is what I mean. Like we know that
Yeah.
the big
But he
threes,
said, what you mean?
but-
He said from the 90s to the 2000s. So
2000s.
like 90s to 2000.
And stop at
You saying
2000, not
2000?
2001, 2002,
Yeah, 2000, 200,
Oh, okay,
like
so
right
no,
there.
then it has to
that's
stay.
the
Oh,
little
so you're stopping
different
at
though,
2000.
because you said 2000s.
No, because we go all
2000s is
we go all the way
2010.
to 2009.
No,
Like
2000s is 2000 to 2010. That's the literal
Now, if we doing
translation of
that,
that.
then Naruto's supposed to be with.
You understand my
Sailor Moon.
confusion
Yeah.
though.
no, I understand your confusion.
2000s is 2000
Yeah.
to
You
2010.
put a
Right, but we know
You
new
should've
90s.
put
We know
2000.
Well, you said
90s.
90.
took that
We
out.
know
no,
90s to
no, no,
2000s,
no.
and even if you did it in music, you say
Hold
90s to
on, hold
2000s music. We're not talking about Chris
That's
Brown
That's
Yeah,
not
we
true
are,
though.
though.
all the way at
'Cause why you putting
Fine
90s?
China. We're
It
talking
said-
about Run It.
If
We're not
if
talking
it had
about
just
that.
said 2000,
Right, that's what I'm about to say.
I
Because if
didn't
you
know
put
it.
90s, that means 90s.
So you're talking about from 1990 to 2000, not 10 year.
right
Yeah.
that 10-year gap because
Changes the bracket of how I think now, because I'm thinking 2000s.
okay.
If
You-
it was
you-
2000,
No, I get you.
You get what I'm saying?
Okay,
I'll put Naruto.
even if you said 2001, because
Okay,
one of them may
okay.
have came
No,
out
no,
2001
no. So
based on
now-
the anime or
watch this, watch
or
this.
manga,
so
whatever.
now Naruto and One Piece can't count.
No.
because they came out in 99.
But and
Now I understand.
One Piece
Now I
could
understand.
because it did come out, but it wasn't
It's only 1 year out. It's not
right.
Papa Chomp said
10 years
2000s.
in.
It
So then. Yeah.
It's 1 year out, but we
From
still
that-
looking
hold
at
on,
ones.
No. They don't count in my process no more
Okay,
because
okay.
the year bracket don't fit for me to put them seriously in a
Papa
bracket
Chomp
like
said
that.
2000 is 2001, 2010.
See, that's what we're saying.
That's what
But
it
for
is.
right now, we're going
Okay.
1990 to 2000.
Okay,
That's fine. Let me
So
answer the
now
question
fucking
based
go
on
there.
that now.
okay.
Still keeping Dragon Ball. Still keeping Pokemon. Now I can say we could keep Yu-Gi-Oh. Now it
Everybody
makes
else to go
sense.
there.
Koza say
But-
Ghost in the Shell, Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke.
You see, I don't think Ghost in the Shell was as popular as Yu-Gi-Oh.
Are we only talking series or movies too?
See?
I
There's
think
so many
if
different
movies
dynamics
came
with
out,
it.
it should count.
Okay, fair
You
enough.
get what I'm saying? If
Fair
movies
enough.
came out in that bracket line,
Fair enough. We know Pokemon 2000 was 2000.
Pokemon had more than one movies in that 10 years.
Yeah, it had two movies.
Yeah, and those are some of the goated ones.
Right. And we know Yugi had a movie as well, but it just
I didn't
wasn't.
see that. I don't
It wasn't as big, no. But we know the show was
But
big.
it had a movie. So
It
whatever.
was one.
I didn't
He
see
got
it,
like
but
4. He
damn.
got like 4 movies. He got like 4.
Fuck, for real?
Yeah, he got like 4 movies. Yu-Gi-Oh got like 4.
If
But see,
we
here's my
doing-
thing with Yu-Gi-Oh. After the first generation, I didn't care about it.
But it's still popular though.
Koza
no,
says
facts.
Studio Ghibli popularity is way beyond Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know what Studio Ghibli
I don't even know
is.
what that is though.
If you're doing
I don't know what that
2000
is.
to 2010, then Naruto's supposed to be there.
Well, yes,
If you go through that 2010, then I'm putting Naruto
Right.
and One
Of
Piece
course.
back in.
Of course,
So
they
that
would
was my
be up
first
there.
thought process.
Of course, they would be up there,
But
but
if you're stopping at
that's a different
2000,
argument. That's why I said the other
If
picture
you're
was for
stopping
that.
at 2000,
2000, then I don't know.
then they're babies at that
Yeah.
point.
Right.
They didn't build no steam
right.
like
No,
that. You know?
no.
They don't
No,
even have an
it was
anime
3.
yet.
It
That's
was
the
3
that's
movies,
probably
not
the manga.
No,
It's 3 movies.
potentially.
No,
Not 4.
that's probably when the either way.
Either way. And that's why I said millennial anime. This is like
No, I
because
got
we're
you.
millennials.
I got you.
We was born from probably
From the-
85.
Here's my thing. Going back to Yu-Gi-Oh.
Mhm.
He's back in the forefront of a contender for that spot now. But for me, after the first generation, when I fell in love with it, I didn't care for that. But points still remain. It was still popular.
Right.
It still is. To this day.
Sailor
Right, what
Moon.
Gaiman said, I think this is a respectable Mount Rushmore considering anime from 1990 to 2000. Right.
Right.
Simba, nothing past the Simba.
Right.
But if you're
Anything.
going past the Simba 2000, like 2000.
Now we got a different debate.
Yeah.
But
It's a big debate after that.
As per that year line, I'm gonna be fair and say I would say yay.
Yeah, that right there. Anything
I'm
remotely after
racking my brain. I'm like, why niggas think One Piece?
anything remotely like 2000, 2002, 2004, 2005. We know Naruto and One Piece was out. They were big. They were blowing
especially
up.
Naruto
They
at
were
the
heating
time.
up. Right. Ichigo with Bleach was heating up
That too. That would be back into the.
That's back in there too. So
But
I'm not gonna argue that.
No, you got a point. I got you.
I'm not gonna argue that, but we gotta really be honest here.
No. If you again going back to your point,
Right.
bang to bang, that 10 years,
Right.
it is what it is. This way, I would say.
Cam said those tariffs made it so they couldn't buy paint for the other statues.
That's crazy.
Jesus Christ.
Only Yugi.
Only Yugi got the hair color. Damn it.
Yugi said, "I'm gonna be fresh,
Drop
nigga."
a bomb for Cam for coming
They
in
don't
here.
even give Goku his blue eyes or yellow hair. Son.
Nothing.
It's crazy.
Ash could have got the little emblem.
Even his
Sailor Moon could have got the little red on the orbs.
even he got damn near 3 colors. He got the purple, the black, and that shit look a little highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
The front piece look a little highlighted.
Right. Sailor Moon could have got some of that red to put on the little orbs right here.
Yugi was all about the swag though.
Yeah.
Their coat game was serious.
Oh my God.
Kaiba's
coat was the best coat ever. Kaiba's coat was the best coat ever.
Nigga came like this, son. Yo, you trying to do him?
Nigga Kaiba looked like a PS5 walking everywhere. Like, the shit was crazy. The whole jacket was sticking up. The shit was flaring out at the bottom. And it stayed like that.
It stayed like that.
Like, the wind was always gusting. He had somebody right there
My
behind the
son,
camera.
Yu-Gi-Oh was on some next shit though. He had a belt on his neck and shit. He was wildin'. He had a buckle right here.
Yeah.
Whole choker.
Little BDSM ass. Yeah. Drop.
Drop the bomb.
We see you.
Yeah,
nigga. The game line sports you, nigga.
But
We caught
low
you.
key, he was on some BDSM shit.
He was. It was leather lace, everything.
Yeah.
Son would had a belt buckle everywhere.
Yeah,
Nigga. It was crazy.
I'm saying. Look, even Sailor Moon got a BDSM heart on her neck.
But that's a girl though.
Yeah.
She can slide with it. Girls can get away with putting a lock on their throat.
Yeah.
Nigga, what you doing?
Yeah. that throat goat is locked up.
That's crazy.
I'm saying.
Damn, Kaiba said he got older brain.
Or Cam said also Yu Yu Hakusho is not there. Silly.
We was talking about Yu Yu Hakusho earlier with the first slide, Cam. We did mention Yu Yu Hakusho. So honorable mention, Yu Yu Hakusho that was brought up.
Facts.
In the earlier slide.
Since you popped in, Cam, real quick, let me just go back. Let me show you what that slide was. Oh wait, no, too far. That's Black History. No, those good people right there.
You go bringing back a pain again.
Right.
Grim Reaper ass nigga over
My
here.
bad. My bad. It won't fix it.
There you go.
All right, right there. We say anime royalty, Cam. This was anime royalty we was talking about, yay or nay.
So yeah, your boy was brought up because everybody was saying, I did mention Yu Yu Hakusho debatable should be on this list.
Right. Cam said, I don't remember Gladys from Yu Yu Hakusho. She was the mathematician in that.
Yeah.
She was making sure all the numbers was right for that bitch. God damn it.
Nigga, the fight's that way.
Oh yeah. Yu Yu Gladys show. Yu Yu Gladys show. I'm done with y'all.
The nigga got no sense of love.
I'm so done with y'all.
Zero,
Yu Yu
bro.
Gladys show.
So yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Got another one after this?
I got one more.
I'm saying, keep it going.
One more. And we said
I want to argue some more.
Last man
fuck
standing.
out of here, man.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I want to make because the video was fast.
Oh, John Wick?
Last.
Wait, hold on.
Here's a scenario. Let me say it. No. Let me say it.
Okay.
This is a 6-way last man standing battle. John Wick, Daredevil, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Terminator, Mike Myers. Who's coming out alive?
Terminator?
Pissing you off?
You know you pissing.
I'm pissing you off?
Pissing you off.
Damn.
You pissing me
Why
off.
is he whispering, chat?
Pissing me off.
Damn.
I'm gonna tell you why you pissing me off though.
Last man stand. Who's coming out of this alive?
Beating the fucking Terminator in close range combat.
Right.
Who's coming? I'm
He
saying.
got a gun. Like,
Who's even without the gun? He's no feel pain. He's stronger. Fuck a durability. He's all metal, bro.
Yeah.
One hit and you're dead.
Yeah, but Bruce Lee got them
What is
hands. He got them hands, bro. Don't.
Bro, what is he gonna do? What is he gonna do?
Mink.
Yeah.
Pressure point? That nigga don't got no pressure, nigga.
Mink.
Terminator all day. Y'all bugging.
Mink.
all day.
And Mike Myers over there.
I think
Mike
personally, we should remove him from the list
Terminator.
to have a debate.
Terminator.
Let's be realistic here.
Okay.
It's a futuristic robot.
Okay.
And then you give him a shotgun that he didn't need.
Cam said GK right on this. It's too close to beat T-800. They
And
all
you're
join
boxed in with
forces
him.
on him
That's the-
and lose. Not even the gun.
Cam called it out. If they were loose,
Right.
hey, yo.
Got him.
Got him. Come back.
Got him.
I'm right here from now on, champ.
Hey, yo.
What did he say?
What did he say?
What did he say?
Oh my God.
You got to be more
Y'all
careful.
gotta clip that.
Somebody clip this,
Oh,
please.
God.
He got to be more careful with this bullshit
He
here.
was go earlier. What
This
happened?
nigga here.
He done ran
Right.
down the hall, came back.
Okay.
This shit is hilarious.
All right.
Got him. Got him.
Take two.
If
Do that again.
Jesus
right, now.
Christ.
they were out in the wild, that's what I said the first time.
They were out in the wild, yeah.
They was out in the wild.
Yeah. They were out in the wild.
Then you could probably.
Two gooses, not nothing getting loose.
Wow, you put it back up.
This nigga here, co-host everybody.
Right.
They're out. I would still go T.
Like outside of the elevator, that little ass space.
But for the fact that you box them, they
Right.
can't punch, kick, shooting them
You
ain't
can't
gonna
do
work.
shit.
Ain't no pressure
Deadly
point.
can't-
There's
can't
no.
get
There's
Deadly
nothing that they're doing that's actually hurting them.
Mm,
He's one slapping you and you're dead.
yeah.
And he's literally programmed to be a killing
Machine.
at perfection.
Yeah.
Let's remove him.
Yeah.
All right, if you want to remove
I'm
it.
just saying that'll be fair enough.
All
So
right.
who, if he not there, who goes first?
All right, so chat, we're removing Arnold Schwarzenegger T-800 Terminator. It's just John Wick, Daredevil, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Mike Myers. Who coming out alive?
John Wick.
Really?
Hold on.
John
Hold on.
Wick?
Hold on. Let me back it up. There's no guns in his hands.
Oh, it's not.
Is he armed underneath? Because he's always carrying.
All right, yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
So he's carrying.
John Wick got a gun. He always got one.
Oh, he clipped you.
It comes down to John Wick and Daredevil.
Over Jackie and Bruce?
Yes.
You
Yes.
think Daredevil could beat Jackie and Bruce?
You talking about Daredevil?
We didn't even have a conversation about Mike Myers. Like, that's fucked up. But
He's not seeing him.
He's getting
not.
shot up.
Yeah, he's not.
He's getting shot up.
All he got is that knife.
shooting don't do shit for him.
16 shots in your head, you're done.
Damn.
You're done. You're done. They're gonna put him down.
Gluttony with the red.
Gluttony with the red.
Drop a
Kitty,
bomb
can I
for
get a
Gluttony
shout
with
out
the
to my
red.
boy Gluttony, please?
Yo. What
Welcome
up,
in,
what up, what
everybody.
up?
Let's introduce ourselves.
Yeah, of course. I mean, let's get the screen back on. real
Welcome
quick.
to the
Hold
Game
on.
Lounge, everybody. I'm your host, Golden Press 200. This is something we do every Sunday
Yes, indeed.
at
Yes,
6
indeed.
p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called the Game Lounge.
Yes.
I'm your host, and my man right here.
CJ, the DJ, the co-host, and the queen of the show.
What's going on, Chad? Is Melanated Monet?
And the YN of the show busting his guts over here.
Yeah.
Somebody needs-
I can go see Epstein. The fuck going on?
Damn, he said Epstein.
Where Epstein popped up?
Epstein, this is Aura.
Hold on
This is
now.
Aura.
Where Epstein at?
Up here. This is Aura.
Nigga said, let me see his file.
Yeah, where the file at?
Drop a bomb for Epstein. Drop a bomb for Gluttony with the Ray, and everybody
Appreciate
coming on
everybody
over.
for popping in. Appreciate y'all.
Everybody from the Game Lounge would just like to say.
So for
What's
those of
that?
y'all who just popped in, this is an all-out fight. So we removed Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-1000.
Right, so
He's
let me.
just too OP.
Yep, we're gonna jump back in real quick. Boop, there you go.
So after he's out, so who's
Terminator. We're removing Terminator because
it's
they
too
said
automatic win.
He's an automatic win, I guess. So it's just John Wick, Daredevil, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan.
He said the rest of the
Mike
files
Myers.
dropping soon. I like that. He
Mm,
went with the
let's go.
joke.
Let's go.
Album.
I
Let's
like
go.
that. He went with the fucking joke.
Yes. Please,
It's a
stick
drop,
around.
it's an
Stick
album.
around. We
Like
like
it's
you.
an album.
Album.
Yes. Yes.
On the album cover, like
Got an EP. The EP.
new freestyle is Friday.
See what I'm saying?
808.
808 Shadow with the
Shout
gift
you out.
subs.
Oh wow. Wow, no, we gotta
Drop a bomb for that for sure.
Can we get a shout out for 808?
Yeah, hit us.
I'm giving them y'all break
Hype train is on fire, y'all. Hype train is on fire.
Let me find out y'all got y'all taxes.
Yeah, who got their taxes?
Because y'all dropping
Wait.
y'all
Let me
bread.
put the screen back. I gotta put the screen on.
Y'all dropping y'all bread. Wild. I got them taxes.
Chat,
Yo, he
real quick.
said, wow, he said GK dropped some bars.
Oh, deserve some bars. Cam said drop some bars. Okay.
Right after we looking at niggas fighting in the elevator.
Okay.
Let me hear something.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna say bye-bye to these rhymes when I see you later.
Okay.
Okay. It's like Le Tigre the band, the brand. That's an alligator.
Skins.
This is real life, not AI. It's not a simulator. It's time to go to bed. Put your hands together. Say your prayers.
Say your prayers.
My bars is deep. It's like dirt. It got many layers.
Layers.
Sis.
Let him cook.
I didn't drop those
Let him
bars
cook.
just now. Twin. Twin. I didn't. Come on, I got bars for the people.
There you go.
I got bars for the people.
Big Brooklyn got you. Dirty Dan got you. Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Cam gonna hit the bar button like I'm gonna be scared of these bars. You feel me? Come on with it, Playboy. Come on with it. Let me pour me a little something.
Yeah,
Let me.
get
I don't want that.
You don't want that.
I don't want.
All right, well, I'll pour it, goddamn thing. I'll pour some of this damn shit. You don't gotta want it. I want it. Look. I want it, goddamn it.
It's only one Coke.
Yeah, hey, be careful. I don't really do none of that coke.
Yep.
No shade to anybody who do it. It's just not happening on this
Coke
side.
on Black History Month? What's going on here?
We don't need no white girl on,
Oh,
no table.
Listen now.
No white girl on nobody's table on Black History
Woo!
Month. It's
Y'all
not cool.
silly as hell.
You just was segueing out of Epstein.
Yo.
Yo, talking about white girls. No,
We
no,
fucking up today.
No.
Great.
Fucked up today. No,
They said Epstein could go.
no.
Epstein. John Wick stays.
Oh man.
John Wick
So-
stays.
John
All
Wick
right.
stays.
So
I think if you remove the Terminator, it's Daredevil.
Nah, if Epstein was up there, he would have won.
If it's close range like that,
Yeah.
it's Daredevil. You're not swinging on him. He's ducking all that.
from
And if it's dark, he sees you.
from double black belts.
He's on that level though. He's on that level. Don't sleep on his karate
I didn't
status.
say I didn't say I'm sleeping on it, but he's fighting against two masters. He's fighting against two
You
masters.
do realize that. Put everything in perspective. He's wearing his superhero suit. He's protected from certain levels of blunt force trauma. Bruce Lee's not kicking that to hurt him. He can take hits from bats and clubs.
Okay,
You got to put it in context. He's wearing his superhero suit.
I get it.
You get what I'm saying? Everybody
Keith
else
said,
is.
I'm in love with the cool.
I'm in love with the cocoa.
Ken said, "Wait, I got a question. They look to be in teams.
No, there's
not-
no teams.
No. Cam, no teams. It's a last man standing. Every man for themselves. Every man for themselves." Nutty Duddy said, "Bruce Lee is the GOAT." Facts, bro.
Yeah, but come on now.
Come on.
Come on now,
It's
stop
just
it.
crazy to just say that
Stop it.
Bruce Lee ain't finna do nothing to Daredevil. Jackie Chan ain't finna do nothing to Daredevil. Nothing to John Wick.
Jackie Chan, you talking about the actual Jackie Chan? That's the stunt devil versus niggas who's jumping off roofs for real? Stop the
He ain't finna
madness.
do nothing to him though. But come on,
Bro, listen to what I just said. You talking about a movie act. Yes, he's skillful. These niggas do that shit for real. For real. For real.
So
Every
Jackie-
night.
So Jackie not for real.
In real life, tell him to go put on a suit and do what Daredevil do. That night, he's dead. Stop the realistic madness,
Cut
bro.
it out.
That
Cut it
night,
out,
that nigga
bro.
is dead that night.
Cut
Same
it
thing
out.
for Bruce Lee. He's dead that night. You're not running down criminals, jumping off rooftop, getting shot at, and dodging bullets, and fighting super tier criminals.
Cut
And-
it out.
What am I cutting out, bro? What are you kidding me?
Cut it out.
You talking about
Jackie ain't
Stop
never
it.
been shot at, bro.
in real life or a movie set?
Cut it out, bro.
In real life,
He
or
does
a
all
movie,
his stunts himself, so it's been.
It's called a stunt.
Let's cut it out, bro.
If you get hurt, there's a medic
That
team.
was a show. This is movie shit too, bro.
No.
The real actor
No.
who does Daredevil probably
No.
don't even do none of his shit.
No.
That nigga's a stunt double right there.
You talking about Daredevil mean you come with the attributes of Daredevil. You come with the attributes of a nigga named Jackie Chan. That's a regular nigga that does stunts. Stop it, bro. No, bro. The only competition after you leave the Terminator is between John Wick and Daredevil. That's the fight.
Coach is saying, have you seen Keanu Reeves shoot? He does competition, so that too. I'll put into factor that Keanu Reeves got a
We're not talking
shot.
about Keanu Reeves. We're talking about John Wick. We're going with the movie lore. We're talking about John Wick. That's an expert already.
Right.
Right, you forgot too that there was a movie that John Wick was in it, but he was called to kill somebody else, which was the main character. They called him to get the main character.
How you the sub main character and you winning?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on now. The only competition after that, like I said, is Daredevil and John Wick.
So chat, put who y'all think is coming out of this last standing match.
I'm standing on Daredevil.
Put in the chat who y'all think is coming out. Who y'all think is coming out?
I'm going Daredevil though.
Put y'all person.
Daredevil.
You say Daredevil?
Daredevil.
I'm gonna go Keanu Reeves, my boy.
I would honestly say Keanu too.
Keanu's nasty.
I would say John Wick too.
That's the only argument debate.
Nobody said Michael.
Nah, he
that nigga getting clapped.
He getting packed up.
He can't fight. These niggas ain't about to let you just do all that bullshit.
Nah. He getting packed up. Pack his bags.
But
yeah, back it up.
Only thing he got against all of them, obviously except Terminator, is strength.
Yeah, he's the most physically dominating one there. Physically.
Yeah,
That's all he is.
Anybody that come in, he's just gonna grab them and slam them and fucking bend the metal in that shit.
I'll be honest. If you let him grab you the wrong way in the wrong instance, he can snap a neck.
Yeah.
Immediately.
I'll give you that. He's not completely 0%.
No.
But he's just not the. You know what I mean?
He said, if it's between Wick and Daredevil, Wick is done.
What?
I agree. Y'all niggas is not really realizing that Daredevil fights people that's above human level. John Wick has never faced somebody that can fight somebody that's above human level. He's capped out at human level.
I hear you.
Proficient human, we know that.
I hear you.
But Daredevil goes above that. He has senses above human level. He can do things that no matter how good John Wick is, he can't do that.
Alright, so let me ask the question that everybody's trying to think of right now. Did Daredevil kill his dog?
Damn.
Did he kill his dog?
Damn, did he kill his dog?
Now we gotta fight.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Fight.
He killed it. I don't know if he killed it.
Did Daredevil step on his dog and killed him or something?
I don't think he stepped on his dog. Terminator is disqualified for being too OP. For sure. I agree, Ken.
Because if Daredevil killed John Wick dog, now we gotta fight.
You know something, Koza? When you put it in perspective like that, I'm gonna agree with you. The way GK put it in perspective, I haven't seen John Wick fight somebody of superhero or super villain stature yet, but Daredevil clearly has. So all right.
But his marksman rifles is crazy.
Yeah, he just got a really good fucking shot.
Right.
But at the same time, you don't need a really good shot inside this enclosed area.
Yeah, but John Wick was fighting in elevators. Nigga. He fought in an elevator before. I think what was that? John Wick 3?
Yeah.
He was in an elevator?
I'm not saying that he ain't got elevator skill.
Yeah.
Beat your ass up, man. Shoot your ass in the knee. Like,
right, pack your ass up.
Yeah, but I gotta be honest with it with Daredevil. It's just that with Daredevil senses, he gotta really, because it's 5 of them in there.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to figure out who's swinging where and what, because he ain't finna be on no Dragon Ball Z dodging 5 niggas swinging. Like, it's not happening.
Yeah, I doubt it.
That ain't got to happen. We ain't gonna just pretend like he on some Ultra Instinct shit and about to just dodge 5 niggas swinging at the same time.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah, but they're not all swinging at him at the same time.
Right. That's
you get what I'm saying.
Right.
Next one. What we got next?
All right. So that was that was good. That was a good one.
Yeah,
y'all.
that was good.
That was actually the last one, y'all.
Thought provoking.
Stop provoking.
Yeah.
All right. Chat, we got some good news.
We got great news.
We got some great news. I hope this damn video decides to get its shit together because it wasn't supposed to be video, it was supposed to be in slides. We got some good news for y'all. Chat, we got some really good news.
Uh-huh.
Monet. is pregnant, of course. We know that.
Show the bump. Show the bump. Show the
people the bump.
It's a little Xavius.
Show the people the bump. Show the people the bump right there. Yeah. Show the people the bump. And Game Lounge is the boy, baby boy is almost here. We are having a Game Lounge baby shower, y'all.
Yep,
So it's coming. BK Dragon said if you put MCU Captain America in the elevator, different results. I agree.
Of course.
I agree.
CJ
Yep, CJ Kozavius Jr. the third. Yes.
That's him right there.
Yes, God damn it. That is it right there. That is definitely
Talk about it.
So yeah, let's talk about it a little bit. Let's unpack this. Chat. My wife, who y'all know is Melanated Monet, is bringing the boy to the Game Lounge. She's bringing him into life, and I'm so happy. So happy. I get to get my boy. I got 2 girls already. This will be my boy. He's going to be named, obviously, CJ Kozavius Jr. the third. And
I don't know who the second and the first is, but
BK Dragon said middle name Drago. Is it you gonna say Drago or Drago? We gotta figure out.
I like Drago.
Drago's better. Anywho, the baby shower is definitely coming, guys, and we definitely want to make sure that we are doing it in front of you guys. We're gonna obviously have one here because being that we live in New York, we're gonna have one in New York.
Right.
But we want to have one on stream for you guys to be able to tap in and see.
Let me chat a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was like, man, listen. You know, I know you guys are gonna do a IRL baby shop, but we got to do one on stream.
Yes.
For the people because we love y'all.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We want to, and for ever since you announced that you was carrying a child, my man been a presence on the show. Ever since.
Yes. He's been here. He's been here. He's been quiet, but he's been here.
So we have to celebrate him. And we gotta do it with the people who's been watching him grow.
Yes.
For the last few months. So we gotta do a Game Lounge baby shower celebration for my man.
Yes,
nephew
indeed.
Right here.
Yes, indeed. So real quick, I just want to go to our website because you guys obviously know the Game Lounge is amazing and everything we do. So on our website, which is gamelounge.live, we actually have obviously our Twitch, Discord, and YouTube. Make sure we put some res on that. But we do have our upcoming events. And one of our upcoming events clearly is the baby shower.
Look at the baby Ryu, y'all.
The baby shower flyer is there. It's Melanated Monet's baby shower. And it's going to be Sunday, March 15th.
Yep.
So that's pretty much 3 Sundays from now.
3 Sundays from now.
3 Sundays. Let me just make sure.
If y'all got kids,
1, 2, 3.
Right.
It's going to be 3 Sundays. So
also let them know it's a family show.
It's
going to bring the kids.
It's going to be a family show that day, so we're not going to go explicit, Broke Nation. We're not going to...
Don't bring no crotch over here.
Yeah, no.
There's a freak man.
It's not going to be no freak Nick stuff. Uncle Broke Nation is going to be here. My kids are going to be here. Other kids are going to probably be here. I don't know. We ain't going to have a whole daycare here. No, but we're going to have...
And we're going to have maybe some of you guys pop up.
We want you guys to tune in.
And I'm sitting in the back that day. I'm not... Uncle GK taking the day off.
Right.
It's all about the family up here.
Yes.
I'm going to be back there with Uncle Broke.
Right. So we definitely want you guys to tune in that day. Play some baby shower games with us. A lot of fun. If you guys would like to donate anything towards the baby course, it's up to y'all. We appreciate everything. If you want us to give the registry, we can send you guys a registry as well.
I was just about to say that you should find a way to
put the registry up. Yeah, all right. I'll try to find.
He's trying to be humble. Don't worry about it. Go on, put it up there.
Yeah. If y'all want to, we put the registry up there. We'll put either Cash App if y'all want to just donate. $1 to $10 to $100, whatever you like.
$1,000.
I mean, if you give $1,000, we gotta put your middle name for the baby. We gotta put your middle name for the baby. Like you paid for that, bro. You definitely paid for that. All right. So for sure, we definitely gonna have that. Other than the baby shower, guys, which will be March 15th. Remember that. Save the date. The YN takeover is definitely coming through.
Oh, we gotta explain what that is.
March 1st.
We gotta explain what that is.
So those of you who do not know,
right there, mind you, I'm so focused on the blue.
Those of you who do not know what the YN takeover is, the YNs, which is Broke Nation,
YN number 1,
YN number 1,
Freddie Fives.
We're gonna have Freddie Fives,
and we're trying to hook it up.
Right.
Chat. Try to see if we can get the boy Julius here.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get our guy Julius.
YNs as well, number 1
right.
YN, but
He's Chat's YN.
He's Chat's YN.
Right. We're gonna try to get Julius.
I called Mama Julius.
Yes.
And I'm arranging something.
Yes. And definitely we gotta have our guy, our cousin of the show,
Cousin
Ash Catcher, cousin Nash.
But he's the big bro.
He's big bro, so
he's not a YN.
He's leading
I'm gonna
the
keep
whole
calling
thing.
him out though.
Right.
He over here disguised as a YN and shit.
And he's disguised right here. Look at the flyer. The flyer, he's disguised right there.
Yep, that's him right
Right
there.
there, right.
Jin Kazama though.
Yeah. So we put Jim because we didn't want to put June. You didn't want to put the moms. I mean, if you want to be a mom, I'm gonna give you some.
Yeah. We can talk after the show. I don't know.
Yeah. Whatever floats your boat.
So March 1st.
Yeah, March 1st, which is one Sunday, 2 Sundays? No, one Sunday. It's one Sunday. It's next Sunday.
That's next Sunday, right?
That's next Sunday.
Yeah, next Sunday.
Yep, YN Takeover is obviously next Sunday,
Shook,
guys.
I need a promo drop.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So we gonna definitely get that going. Promo for sure is gonna come out. So guys, make sure you are here next Sunday for the YN Takeover, and all of us, big bros, unks, and big sis,
we in the
back. Going to be in the back.
So whatever the games that you guys play next Sunday, whatever question is coming from the YNs, and we not hosting.
Yeah,
we're gonna do our introduction.
Yeah.
They put Yardy the Pooh Shiesty last time. It's crazy.
Yeah, and shout out to my guy BK Dragon too. I had tapped in with him earlier about the baby shower. He said he's definitely going to be here. He's definitely going to take some pictures, and I appreciate it. Yeah, definitely got to clap it up for my guy. He gonna get the pictures going. I already set up a whole situation with him. So BK Dragon, fuck with you, bro. I appreciate you.
That's one of the homies, right?
That's
there.
one of the homies. Yes, indeed.
So y'all
yes,
tap
indeed.
in next week for YN Takeover. You know what? I'm actually excited because guess what? I don't gotta worry about making no games.
No.
All the thing I gotta do is fucking clean the studio.
You just gotta show up.
Yeah, just gotta show up.
You gotta just show up.
Just show up. So.
Yep. Gotta talk to Ash. You gotta talk to Freddie. Get Freddie to.
Gotta talk to Julius.
Gotta talk to Julius. Get you guys.
Yeah, you got homework to do. Welcome to production, baby.
Yeah. Got some homework.
I fast PC, so it works.
We got some homework.
So you guys stay tuned in for that next week.
All right.
You ready to get a game going?
Yeah, we can get a game going. You got one?
We got a lot on our plate today.
Okay.
Last week they asked for an Invincible versus.
Okay, Invincible.
And I did
versus.
another game about just questionnaires about old movies and sitcoms and stuff like that.
Okay.
So which one y'all want to get into first?
The sitcom one.
The sitcom
one? You can do the sitcom
it's
first.
Movies. It's from all sorts of shit. Okay, let's do that one.
Okay.
Let's talk about stuff. Who is that? You?
That's me. These are me. Yeah.
Do you know?
Oh.
No.
Okay.
No. That's not either.
Nope.
Yep, there we go.
Go back.
Go back. You gotta show production.
No. Ain't nobody see nothing.
Ain't
nobody see nothing.
I saw Friends.
Ain't nobody see nothing. You ain't seen nothing.
You ain't seen nothing.
I see it.
Ain't nobody seen nothing. Chat, you saw something?
I'm trying different levels of production, so all the questions and the answers all on screen.
Okay.
So I'm gonna grab my paper anyway because I might have like a freestyle question.
Okay.
So, but everything is on screen. The question, the answer, all that. So when you see the question pop up, pause right there and ask the question, and we move on.
All right, cool. Let's get into it.
That's my boy right there.
Yardy, what's up, bro? Wagwan.
See?
Which show is the Wick show? The Wick show.
Roseanne is older.
Roseanne or Full House?
Roseanne is older.
I just see a bunch of white people.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
That's a YN answer.
The YNery is crazy back here.
That's a YN answer
The
like
YN
a mug.
crazy back here.
Roseanne is definitely older.
That's a YN answer like a mug.
Let's see what chat's saying.
Roseanne.
So Hollywood Gold.
No,
Hollywood said Roseanne. Let's see what chat. Who else in chat got something to say? He said, "I just see a bunch of white people." That's not funny.
YN shit.
YN shit.
Okay. Think y'all right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
I would say Full House.
No, Roseanne. Kiss my ass.
87.
She thought she knew some shit.
But it's one by 1 year, obviously. But
yeah.
I just felt like Full House was older, and
you just guessed it. Don't lie. Don't lie.
Damn, the nigga explained his thought.
I don't even care no.
Because you said once you said you sure with that. Y'all go with that?
Yo,
You
that's
said no, I think
crazy.
Full House.
Nah,
That's
I
crazy.
mean, I could have been wrong.
No,
Could have been Roseanne. I would have been
know
like, damn,
you.
I was
I'm
wrong.
married to you.
Crazy.
God
She
damn.
said I'm married.
You're lying.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
She just throw missiles. Pew pew pew.
You're lying.
You know, you got room on this couch. You know?
You got a room on this couch.
Oh God.
Which show had more
Okay, you
seasons?
got me there.
Mm.
Because
Who
they
was
did
a
grow
longer
up. They
running?
did grow up. Full House.
Well,
I
see,
didn't watch
more
those
seasons
games.
don't mean longer running. Longer seasons.
It does
more.
mean longer
It
running.
does mean longer. Means you have more
Same
seasons.
shit. You ran longer.
Cause,
You got more
but
seasons.
if Full House got 5 seasons with 20 episodes per season.
Seasons mean season. You got 1 season, 2 seasons.
Yeah.
We didn't say we should have more episodes.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes
seasons.
certain shows episodes be more
Yeah,
than
well,
the
Full
seasons.
House.
Right,
Full
but who
House.
got
Full
more
House is
seasons
still
than
going.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
right.
And that, I'm
Well,
just
no.
Oh, you're processing.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
I got you.
Yeah.
Because you might have seen more Full House, but it was in 1 season.
Yes.
I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
I understand what you're saying.
Just pick which one, goddamn you.
You pick one.
Yeah.
You pick one, goddamn it.
Full House.
Full House, goddamn. Oh, you want to pick Full House
You
now?
sound logic.
No, stay on your
You sound-
Roseanne
no,
side,
you
goddamn
sound
it.
logical.
Stay on your goddamn Roseanne side.
Logical.
She don't even like black people.
Like, technically, my ass, fuck all that shit.
It's the bullshit here.
You don't like news?
Rest in peace to the GOAT, Danny
It's
Tanner,
still
goddamn.
February in
it.
this motherfucker.
I'm tired of him.
No,
Like,
I'm
everything's so technical.
Shit.
Which one got more seasons that said certain
Shit,
shows?
you
see
tell
what-
me,
Yeah.
goddamn it.
They're wrong longer than me. That
You
much
tell
seasons.
me,
Just
goddamn
because
it.
it's longer than me.
Oh,
Shit.
God.
It ain't the question. The
They
question
brung
is,
Roseanne
which show
back.
has
Shit.
more seasons?
Oh God.
Roseanne got more seasons?
No, I said you answer since you said technically it doesn't mean long running. Fuck all that shit. Which one?
Roseanne got more seasons. Cause you want to flip flop.
I
I'm
don't
gonna flip
know.
flop. Yeah.
Wait, so Fuller House don't count?
Yeah. Fuller House don't count. That's Fuller House.
Yeah, we're not talking about the bringbacks. We're talking about
Oh, is it-
because Roseanne has a bringback too.
Yeah, exactly.
I never watched.
Yeah.
Did you watch Roseanne?
Yeah.
What's the little boy name? Watch it. What's the little boy name?
Fuck that little
No,
boy.
yeah. Shut your ass
I don't
up.
fuck with that
What's
little
his
boy.
name?
He was
What's
on the.
his name?
He wasn't on the. That little nigga wasn't on the 10 seasons.
What's
He
his
wasn't on the
name?
10 seasons. Goddamn
The only
it.
person I know is Dan.
Yeah, Dan. Goddamn it.
Dan and Roseanne. That's all I know.
God damn it.
Goddamn it. Fuck that.
Fuck that white ass family. They mad white, son.
She said they murked Roseanne's character off the show like it was a genjutsu.
Yeah, they got rid of that bitch.
God
Crazy.
damn.
They got rid of that bitch.
Hell yeah.
Rin the Goblin Master, I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Ren. Drop a bomb for Ren for sticking around partying with us, hanging out and whatnot.
See, if Dragon Ball Z didn't count as Dragon Ball earlier, then Fuller House don't count
Exactly.
as Fuller House.
We talking about this like we said, the Roseanne and Full House run.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Not the 10-year, 15-year
Yeah, because they
bring
did.
back.
They came back with a Fuller
Yeah, but
House.
they both came back.
Right.
See, I didn't even know Roseanne.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
both came back.
Yeah. And they got that ass up out
So
of here.
10 seasons to 8 seasons. Y'all are hilarious.
Here we go.
I never watched that.
Ooh.
Which show premiered in '96? Jamie Foxx or the Wayans Bros?
God, I love the Wayans brothers
I
so
got them
much.
fucked up. They think they black. Black history.
Which
Look at them.
show
Look at them.
premiered
Look at them.
in
Don't know shit.
96?
You don't know nothing. Shut up.
I feel like the Wayans
Who's
was
the Wayans
'98.
I watched the Wayne brothers a little bit.
The Wayans brothers did.
I feel like the Wayans was '98.
The Wayans brothers.
Why do I think
96.
that?
Because
I
he
know- I
was
know
still
my
doing Living
peoples,
Color
y'all.
in '96, wasn't he?
Yeah, they were still
So
in.
it was the Wayans brothers, right? When
No,
Living
no,
Color stopped?
the Wayans was Living Color in '96. I think
He was in. They're both from. All of them was in Living
They
Color.
all was in Living Color clearly, but
Right.
except
See what I
Pops.
did here. See what I did here. I'm a mad fucking
Butthead.
genius. I wrote these questions.
He's a
with
mad
intention and purpose.
genius son of wit with WIC.
Which? What you mean? That's which?
That's which.
Which show? WITCA is which?
No, you forgot the H. It's WHICH.
Come again? Oh, you're right. You're right. Shut
Yeah.
up.
Mad genius. Mad genius.
Pull up the chat. Let me see the chat.
I went to college, goddammit. Fuck you! Fuck you! I'm a scanner.
The Wayans brothers.
Koza said the Wayans. BK Dragon said Jamie.
Oh, God, you guys are
Hollywood said,
hilarious.
I don't know, I'd be guessing if I choose.
But guess anyway, Holly. No, I want him to guess. Just drop one.
I'm gonna say the Wayans.
BK
Just
said
say
Wayans, my
Wayans or
fault.
Jamie. Just guess. Just take a guess. Take a guess. Give Holly a couple seconds. Let me see.
Yeah.
Take a second. I just want him to take a guess.
Yeah, take a shot in the dog.
Don't matter if you know or not. It's all black nigga shit.
Right. Wayans was out when I was in 5th grade.
Wayans. Okay, he said Wayans. Okay, let's continue.
Okay.
Let's see what it is.
All right. I feel like it
That's
was.
his Wayans, right?
Ah.
95. I put the year for them too.
95 was
They really
Wayans.
was neck and neck. That's why we
90
keep shit right.
I did this on
95?
purpose.
Wow.
Yeah.
95 though?
Yep. I looked it up.
I didn't like TV fights like that.
You
That
know
shit's
what?
cool, but I
It
prefer-
makes sense.
I remember. Go ahead. I want me to cut you.
It makes sense because Living Color still was going in
Right.
95,
Uh-huh.
but Keenan still was right. Still wrote this.
Here's what I say. Like personally, when I was doing this, I knew it was when because I was watching them way before I was watching him.
Me too. That's what I thought they was first.
So the Wayans. He said which
I
one
thought
came
they
out
were
in 1996.
They were first.
I
but
purposely
Exactly.
did it like that. Put which one
I
came
thought
out
it
in
came-
1996.
Right.
Okay.
If I would have said which one came out in 1995, which was my first initial question,
We would've
y'all
said
would have got that.
Yeah.
I switched it
if
on
you would have
purpose
said who came first.
because there's just 1 year.
Yeah. Who
You see what I did? I
Yeah.
did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on, twin.
All right.
Come on, twin.
Mad Genius
Ooh.
here. What movie came out in 2007?
I didn't see either one.
Avatar.
In 2007,
Avatar.
Transformers.
That's the first Transformers
Yeah.
and the first Avatar.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I
First
didn't see neither
Transformers
one
was in 07. I would have remembered that.
See what Chad's saying.
Holes.
Shia LaBeouf.
Holes was.
You be wilding now.
Holes was.
Holes was what? I know the movie Holes.
05.
See what Chad's saying.
I'm gonna go Transformers.
Avatar. It was
You
Avatar.
go Transformers
Yeah, I'm gonna
and you going Avatar.
Avatar. I'm going Avatar.
Chad said
I'm like
Transformers.
8 out of 10.
He said
8.5.
he said GK's diabolical. I know my peoples.
Costa said Transformers. Gotta be.
I'm saying 8 out of 10. No, 8.5 out of 10. Avatar.
Okay. I love this. You guys like this game?
Yeah,
You guys
yeah.
like this game? Figure I shake it up, bring it back to when we talk about shows and
Yeah,
movies.
Everybody
yeah.
saying Transformers.
Oh, yeah,
though.
oh,
Everybody
yeah.
saying Transformers.
I think Transformers.
I
All right,
swear
run it,
was
run it, run it,
Avatar.
CJ.
I swear it was Avatar.
Yay!
Oh,
Avatar
9
came
for
out
So
Avatar?
stupid.
Damn, I didn't know.
Oh, 9 for Avatar? What was...
Yeah, it was.
So, Holes was 04. Yeah. All right.
Makes sense. You see, when you see it and
Yeah.
you recognize it,
Holes
what-
was 04, 05. Yeah.
you guys do recognize
could've-
that when the check mark come up, it has a ping. I gotta do that myself.
Yeah.
I didn't
He
realize
could've
that.
been-
This is professional shit
Yeah,
here.
I'm professional.
Ping, ping.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
GK's been upgraded from the LED
Let him
illumination
know.
specialist.
Let them know.
He's been updated. Wait, let me put the cup down. Wait a minute.
Go let them know, player. I got a new
Yeah,
certificate.
yeah. Let me get the screen on.
Get the screen on.
Let me get the
nigga.
screen
Put the
on,
fucking
okay.
screen on.
Got the game.
Put the fucking screen
Let,
on.
let's get
Put
everybody
the
up to
screen on.
speed.
Get up to
GK
speed.
has graduated in the tech department, so let's give a clap to that. He was the illumination specialist with LED certification.
I used to hold lights.
Right. He's the hold the lights, but now he's capture card specialist with HDMI certification
HDMI, nigga.
and wire management.
Wire
Management.
I could even do Type C.
Type C management. He has Type C certification for wire management.
You understand what I'm saying now? Now
Right.
watch this. I was streaming, right?
Right.
And we had audio issues.
Right.
I ain't even call you.
No need.
I fixed it.
Because you had wire management. Wire management. God damn it, wire management.
Hello to you too.
Forklift certified as sure.
Damn it.
BT Gamer said, what games are we doing today? We're doing
What's
some
up,
fun
BT?
games.
Talking about shows
What-
and movies and all of this.
Good day to you, my good sir. How are you today?
Welcome in,
All
my
right,
guy.
welcome in.
We got games ready.
So we are
Forklift certified. Let's fucking listen.
right. I'm just
Listen,
saying.
Cozy, you was there when
Yeah.
when Cozy and Kitty was like, "Oh, we can't hear." I said, chill,
Right,
chill. Let me get the mouse.
Right.
And I had to get the pillow.
right.
Then I was like moving shit. I was like, "It's better." They was like, "Nah." I was like, "I got 2 more tricks."
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom. They said we could hear you.
Right. See?
Yeah, what?
See?
Right, nigga.
I'm saying the Department of Capture Card Enterprises. sent the certificate for you. I saw it myself.
You saw it. You
I
was there.
just
What the fuck?
What the next?
it's all the way up.
Bullshit.
It's upstairs right now on the dresser. We're not gonna walk all the way upstairs to
Yeah.
get the certificate.
Across the hallway.
Yeah, yeah.
Just trust me.
Yeah.
Just trust me.
Trust me when I tell you I saw it.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Let's see what's up. What movie is older?
Ooh,
Y'all don't know
Snow
shit.
White. No, I think it's Pinocchio.
Got y'all fucked up.
Pinocchio
Fuck.
came with no color, didn't it?
I did my
Pinocchio.
research.
Those
talking about-
ones right there.
No, we're talking about
this ones.
no. Which movie is
Of
older?
these movies.
Yes.
The
It
animated
It
version.
doesn't have to be
Toys.
this picture.
The animated versions.
Oh,
of
you
it.
mean period?
Snow White, Pinocchio, the title.
Oh, okay.
the title?
Yes.
Pinocchio.
Yeah, Pinocchio.
Which movie is older? Meaning, which one was animated first in history as a cartoon?
That's
Pinocchio.
Okay, you understand? I just want everybody to understand.
The animated
Right, because
edition.
a lot of people see the picture and be like, "Well, that version."
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
No,
no.
The Disney
I'm clarifying.
animated
Right,
version.
I'm clarifying.
Right.
Which one was animated? The first one ever out of these two, ever.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it's Pinocchio, honestly.
For sure, Pinocchio was definitely older by.
So they're both old.
Yeah, they're old. Pinocchio's older by, like, origin, but not. Potentially, maybe not by Disney play, but I'm still gonna go Pinocchio anyway.
You going Pinocchio?
I'm still
I'm
going
going
Pinocchio
Pinocchio too.
anyway.
What about you?
Yeah, I'm going Pinocchio.
Let me see what chat's saying.
Because
Let's
Dr.
see.
Geppetto was bugging.
Coulter said Snow White. Oh, Coulter said I did witness something to that effect
What?
about the.
He was there.
Man, he was.
I fixed it.
He was.
Yeah.
BK Dragon said Snow White as well.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. See what
I'm
you
going
got.
Pinocchio.
You going Pinocchio?
I'm going Pinocchio.
Watch the ed. Watch
Yay!
Yeah, I got one right. Goddamn you.
the 1937,
Wait, no.
1940. That's how old, and that's animated.
So then
So
Snow
the
White
answer
wins.
is Snow
then.
White. You gotta check next to Pinocchio. Got me your height.
Oh, my bad.
God
Yeah,
damn it! I
yeah,
thought I was
yeah.
right.
My
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. So
Oh, wait,
technical
no.
difficulties.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Don't
Snow
go
White
take
was
him.
first.
Don't go taking back my certificate.
Right.
Now let me check the paperwork.
Yeah.
Let me check the paperwork.
Definitely
I
check
got
the
it.
paper. Yeah, right.
Let me check.
Right.
Yo,
Let him check
Snow
it.
White,
Let him check the paper. Yeah, let me see,
1937.
yeah.
Pinocchio,
Yeah.
1940.
Right on.
Right on.
Right on.
Right on.
Right on. Right on.
Check mark certification is shaking right now. Right.
Shaky.
I gotta go back for my 8-hour class. I gotta go back.
You went down a grade just now, nigga.
Damn.
You had the sound and everything.
Why you hating?
Why
Why
you-
you?
You made me think I was right. Just
GK
now.
said I passed, goddammit. I ain't say with flying colors.
Yeah, you know. They hired me already. You're
I
stuck
thought
with me
I was
now.
right.
Damn, son. Nigga debated.
Yo, that's crazy work. But yeah.
So yeah, it's
Snow White.
Snow White.
We just got debated.
I got a good one,
Ooh.
Okay, Disney's most popular princess.
Elsa.
and I looked it up. I looked this up.
Elsa.
Yeah.
So we
you
got
would think so.
Cinderella, Belle, Snow White, and Elsa.
I'm gonna go with Cinderella.
And I looked up her name. Her name is Snow White.
I'm gonna go with Cinderella.
I tried to find her actual name. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's Snow White.
It just says name is Snow White.
it's
Snow. Yeah, they
Her
call
name-
they call it Snow.
That's her actual name.
Yeah.
I learned something today doing this because I do look things up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cinderella.
Yeah, Cinderella is her real name.
No, I'm going with
Belle
Cinderella.
is-
Oh, that's your answer, Cinderella?
I'm
Okay.
gonna go Elsa.
It said Disney's most popular princess. And I did do a look up to see.
Wait, hold on, Moana not up here? What the fuck going on here?
She's not the most popular.
No, she's not.
She is a princess, isn't she?
She
No,
is.
Disney
No,
has
she
many
is,
princesses that
but
will
she's
put
not
up the
most
screen.
popular.
Right.
But
Okay.
I tell you what, the answer is on this list. I'll give you
Yeah.
guys that.
Yeah.
Cinderella.
I'm gonna go Elsa.
Cinderella's
You say
real-
Elsa?
Yeah, I'm going Elsa.
Cinderella's really big, but Elsa really stormed when
Yeah.
she came out.
Nasty. She was crazy, yo.
Most popular
Everybody knew Elsa.
princess.
Shoot, the little
Okay.
kids now all know Elsa.
Okay.
See what Chet said.
Yeah, I
Okay,
said
I'll give you guys a hint if you want.
it's neither of the two we said. Cinderella is mentioned throughout the
BK
years.
Dragon said the hint.
Right.
Cinderella is mentioned throughout
Elsa
the
is
years
popular
in
now,
many ways.
Right.
along with Cinderella.
Right.
Cinderella
That's what I
has
said,
been
Cinderella.
popular
I
since
better
the
be
dawn
right.
of
I better be
time.
right.
Yeah,
Wow.
And so has Belle.
yeah.
Belle been popular for a
Yeah.
long time too, but Elsa is running shit right now.
Just 'cause it's
Yeah.
just Disney shit.
She's
Storm.
running shit right
Everybody
now.
Yeah.
know. Shoot, the
I'm just
young
throwing
kids
y'all
now.
food to think on.
Yeah.
What's the answer?
I'm gonna go with BK Dragon and say Cinderella.
You said Elsa.
No, I
I'm sticking
said
Elsa.
I said Cinderella's been going for a long time, but Elsa's been storming since she's been out. Since she's been out, all the little kids of every ethnicity, not just white, but just
I would
all
say
ethnicity.
Elsa is probably the most popular modern
Yeah.
She
Yeah,
wins
modern,
that category.
right.
Period.
Yeah,
Cinderella
yeah.
got it hands down though.
Let's see. Let's see.
Cinderella.
Yeah, I know
Cinderella.
Cinderella, and I looked it up. She sells more toys, more anything princessy.
Party.
Cinderella
More
is
than
the creme
Elsa?
de la creme.
Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Yep.
Think about it, she was way before Elsa.
Way before Elsa, and
Way
even if Elsa right now is a little above her, I'm decades ahead of you and still rivaling you.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? It's Cinderella.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
when it comes to the princesses. It's Cinderella.
Cinderella is it? Yeah.
Wow.
She's been the
She's
staple.
the princess of princesses.
picture,
yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
I think that was the last one. Let me see. Oh nope.
Which
Good
one is older, Star Wars or
That's the
Jaws?
first Star Wars and the first Jaws.
Damn.
First Star Wars, not all that other shit afterwards.
Damn, the original, the Luke,
first
I am your father.
The original first Star Wars movie and the original Jaws movie. Which one is older?
I'm gonna probably say Jaws.
I'm gonna go Star Wars.
I'm gonna go Jaws.
I'm gonna go Star Wars. I feel like Luke,
BK
I
Dragon
Am Your
say
Father.
Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm gonna go
I hate
Luke,
Star
I Am Your
Wars.
Father because I feel like that shit
Yeah, I
is
can never get into it.
Yeah, I hate it.
it's just as
I
old
got
as
into
Star
it later
Trek.
on.
Like
I hate
and
that
Star
and
Trek
Star
is
Trek.
old.
Star Trek.
I
Oh,
hate that
wasn't
too.
Star Wars before Star Trek? If I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Star
do not
Wars
like
was the movies version. Star
Yeah.
Trek was like the TV,
the TV
version.
series.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
don't like it.
Yeah, that's
Beam
I'm
me
giving
up,
her all
Scotty.
she's got, Captain.
Yep, beam me up, Scotty.
I'm giving her all she's got.
The bitch can't go no further, Captain.
He said, Scotty, I need you to go faster. I'm giving her all
Beam
she's
me up,
got.
Scotty has got to be the most popular line
Yes,
ever.
beam me up, Scotty. For
I only
sure.
know that from Pam from Martin. That's the crazy part because I didn't watch this.
I'm giving her all she's
Star
got.
Wars.
Jaws was like late 70s, I think. Okay.
Jaws.
Oh, BT
yeah.
Gamer
BT
say
Games
Jaws.
is Jaws.
Good fan.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yes, that's two right for tonight.
Jaws.
75 versus
2
77.
years. Wow. Food for thought. I would not have thought that. I really thought Star Wars was before Jaws.
They're not that far off.
Food
They're
for
not
thought.
that far off.
I thought they were far off. Like, let's say Star Wars was in the 70s. I felt like Jaws was 80s.
Oh.
Nah.
Because
Jaws
didn't they
is
have
old.
didn't they have more
It was-
draws?
Yeah,
So you're
there's more than one.
being that it's so old,
You probably
sometimes
were
your
thinking
brain
about-
mash when you relate to Jaws.
Yes.
It could have been
Right.
Jaws too.
Yeah.
You get what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
Right.
And
Could've
they always
been.
keep
Jaws is old
rerunning
as
it
fuck.
too.
Yeah, Jaws is old.
I really felt like Jaws was 80s, but I felt like
No,
Star Wars
I
was
get
definitely
you.
70s.
I got you.
They keep bringing new ones out though. That's probably why it mess up your brain.
All right.
So we got more?
There was a question that I had up there. Let me see.
$100.
$100. It's one of the things you gotta put.
Okay. Cool,
Okay,
cool,
so
cool.
you
So
gotta
let me-
build a team to take over the world. You
Mhm.
only got $100. You could spend $60 on tier
Take over
1,
the world.
$30 on tier 2, and $10 on tier 1. That equals 100.
Okay.
So you can only spend $100 to build a team to help you take
So
over
it's
the
from top to
world.
bottom.
To take over the world.
Take over the world.
Well, we know Darth Vader didn't take over shit. So I'm not.
But if we conceptualize the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're using Darth Vader to take over Earth. He's far superior technology than anything Earth have, plus power.
Okay.
Nah, Killmonger taking my $10.
Yeah.
That nigga was nasty.
I'm picking Namor.
Okay,
Yeah,
no, start from the top. Start from the top.
Let-
Start from the
let-
top.
okay, start from the top. Let's start from the top.
$60. $60.
This is Black Adam,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kang the Conqueror.
Kang the Conqueror, and
That's the Sorcerer Supreme.
Sorcerer Supreme.
Black
Yeah.
Adam.
Yeah.
The Rock
Exactly what
version.
that was.
Yeah.
And then
Darth Vader.
Darth Vader.
You didn't watch Deadpool 2, right? No, not Deadpool 2. Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yes.
That's the bald girl that was wilding that they had to beat.
Okay.
Yeah, she was wild.
Even in Spider-Man.
But
what's it? The last
still be
Spider-Man.
there.
The Spider-Man with Doctor Strange.
yeah.
Oh, that's
That's who she
No
went
Way
to.
Home.
I remember when Hulk talked to her, she just pushed him.
Yeah,
She just deformed him.
yeah. She's nasty.
She took the Bruce Banner right back out of Hulk. Like,
Yep.
cut that shit out. You don't scare me.
Yeah,
Stop
she's
it.
nasty.
Like,
Oh my
what
God.
Doctor Strange is, she
Yeah.
was the Sorcerer Supreme before him.
Ooh.
So you're talking about ultimate levels of magic.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
She's wilding.
So whatever you think Doctor Strange is,
Okay.
she's one of his teachers.
All right. So I'll tell you what. Give me her.
Yeah,
Give me Namor.
right. And Killmonger.
No.
What?
Let me see what you're gonna pick for the bottom one. Come on. Come on now.
If it's Green
It's
Goblin,
only 2 options at the bottom, in my
if it's Green
opinion.
Goblin,
It's
like I said, he
only
got
2
packed up by a
options
spider.
at the bottom. And
He got
Give me
packed-
Lex.
Luthor?
Give me Lex.
I'm gonna tell you why that's a genius. With Lex comes Batman level money.
Batman level money
And
smarts.
the intellect 12th level intellect, which only like a 0% of anybody ever existed would have
Yep.
that.
Now Green
And
Goblin,
now you have the money to back that up.
Green Goblin is smart and he got money too, but he's a psycho.
He's a psycho.
So he go into this manic state.
Lex,
I don't got
Lex
time
is
for that.
diabolical to like become president and that type of shit. Like
Right.
Put him the fuck.
Okay.
I would say Homegirl, the Sorcerer Supreme,
Right.
Namor, and Lex. Give me those three.
That's a good one. That's a real solid pick. What you got?
I don't know these people like that, so I pass on this.
You pass on this one?
I'm gonna pick for you. You wouldn't pick Lex, but you would
Start
pick.
from the top.
She would pick.
You never seen Killmonger?
Yeah, so
She probably would pick Homegirl.
Mm-hmm.
She would pick Namor. Namor's Black Panther, the one that was in the
bad
water.
guy.
The bad guy.
When he was fighting Shuri
The nigga with the
Oh,
wings
The
right
with the
here.
wings on the ankles and he was flying around.
and killed Shuri's mother.
Yeah. And Killmonger.
Yeah, Killmonger.
Okay.
That's what she would pick.
Okay.
Them three right there.
You.
I'm gonna go Sorcerer Supreme.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go crap. The guy that's in the red. Oh, I forgot his name.
This guy over here?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And then Killmonger.
Okay. Here's my lineup.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go Kang.
Okay.
Because Kang exists across all timelines.
I see what you do there.
He has technological advances from what I mean all timelines. He can come from 100 million years in the future.
Mm-hmm.
The technology he possess is rivaling magic. 2, he's all knowledge because he has knowledge from all across.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? He has
Right.
multi-dimensional knowledge.
Right.
So I'm gonna go Kang based on that.
Right. Okay.
My second pick would be Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah.
But I'm based on what just the multiple layers of Kang.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Kang. For the second one, I'm gonna go this bitch right here. That's my magician.
Okay.
She was, you remember, in the show, she was the enemy for Wanda. Magic shit.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go her.
Scarlet Witch
And
enemy. Right.
Yes, give me magic. Right?
Okay.
For the bottom, Lex. Now I got money to cater to all that. Can't
Right.
lose.
The reason why I did my set, she's my magic, he's my army, but he's my emperor.
Money. No,
Remember.
that's a good lineup.
Yeah.
That's a good lineup. But I would think she would defeat him very easily. She can just blip him away. He don't have that kind of speed to blitz her.
But could she blip her away?
Sorcerer Supreme?
Yeah.
No.
So that's what the
You
problem.
got-
She said your magic
you
is
got
mine,
that.
nigga.
Sorcerer Supreme, you got that.
She would stop the blip for him.
With Sorcerer Supreme, the only person there rivaling anything for her up there is
It's
Kang.
Kang.
Because he exists across every...
Right. So you blip one, you got to deal with the others.
Yeah.
And they all multi...
Right.
exist at the same time, somewhat kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from him, I would have won her too.
Mm-hmm.
But because I had to substitute Sorcerer Supreme,
Right.
because I chose Kang, I'm gonna choose her for the magic.
Yeah. She looked like I don't for all my Mortal Kombat 11 and 1 players, she looks like Chronica.
He said Cassandra,
Cassandra.
Nova. Where's Nova?
Cassandra Nova is the top.
That's her name.
Yeah.
Oh, it's one person. Cassandra Nova.
Yeah.
Vecna. Who's Vecna? Which one is Vecna?
This one.
Probably the
I don't think that's Vecna. It's either her or the red one.
it gotta be the red guy.
The red guy. And Lex. Lex is the obvious pick at the bottom.
Not
The only other
necessarily.
option is the blue guy because he's an alien that's advanced.
Yeah.
It's a Star Trek character, I believe, isn't it? Or
Yeah.
a Star or is that a Star Trek character or a MCU character? Where is he from again? Is he one of them Yandu niggas?
He look. I thought
don't
he was
know.
from Avatar, but
No. I know the character. He's from either Star Wars or not Star Trek or
Ew.
MCU somewhere. But yeah. All right. See what else we got.
yep.
I have no
That's-
clue.
All right. What else we got? We got some YN stuff. YN.
Jesus.
Hey.
All right, so let's pause it. All right,
I got
So-
you. Hold on.
this week is Pokemon week. So
Is it?
yes,
This
it
week is Pokemon week, everybody.
What
Yes,
does
it
that
is.
mean?
So
So this week, all the Pokemon fans and trainers are, celebrating because don't want to spoil it yet because the next slide is gonna happen. But Basically, this is my GOAT, and this is all the people throughout the anime that he met. My GOAT.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
This
indeed.
is everybody he
Check
met.
Ash out. Check Ash out. Shout out to my guy Ash Ketchum.
Yes, sir.
Our Ash and the GOAT Ash.
And the goat ash.
Right,
we got
right.
two goated
We go-
ashes.
Two goated ashes. Yeah.
Everybody that he met. All right, you can go.
All right, so let's get on through. Let's see.
So now, pause. Wait, not yet. There you go.
What's this?
Now,
It's the Nintendo. That's
Fire
the Nintendo.
Red and Leaf Green coming February 27th.
Is that a warning?
Yep.
yeah.
Oh,
they saying?
shit. Chat.
Travel ban beginning at 9 o'clock,
What time is it now?
8 o'clock.
So that means you guys got to get going.
Yeah, we got to
soon.
get out of here.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
So, yeah.
Let's wrap this up because we want them to get home safe
God
and
damn.
back to the families. The snowstorm is getting so bad that we just got a travel warning.
Yep, we got travel one in chat
So,
just now. So, we're going to run
do
through this.
or
and
another
then,
one or just this?
Not just this, and we're going to cut it.
Because I need you guys to get home safe.
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
chat that you guys understand, they got to go.
Yeah.
All right, so speeding it up.
It's a bad snowstorm over here.
we
Y'all.
got-
Really
yeah.
bad snowstorm on
Yeah.
this side.
Safety first, chat. We want them to get home safe.
Right. So let's run through this.
All right, so but this game is coming out for all Switches on this week on the 27th.
What is this?
Fire Red and Leaf Green for Switch 2.
It's a Pokemon game?
It's a
Yes, it
Pokemon
is.
game. So basically the original red
The
and green
original ones? Yeah.
versions,
Yeah.
but
It's
they
still-
came out with a
Right.
HD version of red and green,
Yeah.
I'm not mad at that.
and then now they're going to port it to the Switch 2 now.
I'm not mad at that.
Right. Also
Right.
the
If I had a Switch
27th.
2, I would get that.
Yeah.
Also the 27th
Yeah, I'm
is
on my way to
actually
get the money.
Pokemon's birthday. Actually.
Oh,
Po-
okay.
the-
February 27th is
30
Pokemon's birthday.
Let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up.
We about to
So
fucking
go
talk.
up more. So now,
My mother said, yeah, because it's crazy. You
Next.
feel like a motherfucker.
all right. So there's an imposter. I said Among Us wrong, but anyway, there's an imposters Among
Number
Us
9.
who is not a dragon.
Number 9.
Number
Who's not a
9
It's
dragon.
a
Not a
fucking
dragon.
shrimp.
who is not a dragon.
Is that even a real Pokemon?
Give you a hint. There's four guys here that's not a dragon.
Number 9.
Okay.
Number 9.
Number 1.
Okay.
Number 3.
Number 3. Okay.
Number 3. It's a fucking lizard.
Okay.
And number 7.
Yeah, so you want to do number 3?
Number
Look at
7
his
is like a
form.
horseshoe. I mean, a seahorse.
I don't even know what the fuck 4 is.
I said
That's
that's
Dialga. That's my favorite.
Oh,
Pokemon.
okay.
That's Dialga.
That's that shit.
what's number 8?
Number 8,
That's a Pokemon called Ultra Necrozma.
That's it looks like a sexy moth.
a sexy moth.
A sexy moth.
A
9
sexy
is a
moth.
dragon.
Crazy.
9 is a dragon? Well, I'm not picking him
He said-
anymore.
He said 9 is a dragon. I'll let y'all know.
I'm saying 3 for sure.
Okay. Cool.
1. 1 for sure.
Okay.
1 is a
What's the answer?
pterodactyl. That's not a dragon. It's a
Mm.
pterodactyl rock or some dumb shit.
Wait, go back.
Well, you got to tell us.
I gotta tell y'all it right. I gotta tell
Oh.
y'all it. I was trying to let
I
you.
thought it was
I was
the
trying to let
answer.
you answer.
What's
I
no?
thought
We
the
gotta
answer was
rush through
coming
this.
out.
What
Yeah,
is
I know.
this?
So all the dragons are 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12.
Okay,
13.
so let me ask you a
So it's
question.
10,
No, let
one.
me ask you a question.
Mhm.
Why was this smarter to tell us who wasn't the dragon?
Yeah. Shuki, what the fuck?
did you just do?
I said, who's not a dragon?
But you
you're
just told us
supposed to say
who was
is
a
the
dragon.
So
we can
tell
know.
us who's not the dragon.
Tell us who's not a dragon.
Oh, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, my fault. No, because I'll tell y'all who's the dragon.
No, we want to know who
That's not the
ain't.
goddamn
All right,
question.
fine. All right, 5 is not a dragon. 5 is not a dragon.
1.
10 is not a dragon.
1 is not a dragon.
1 is not a dragon, and 3.
1, 5,
1, 3, 5, 10.
1, 3, 5, and 10
Okay.
are not dragons.
This
Yeah, they're
nigga
not
here.
dragons. My
Yeah.
fault. Anyway, yeah, I did it mixed up, but
This,
yeah.
this crazy guy here, chat.
Right, I'm like,
But
wait,
it's
what-
Charizard. Y'all knew Charizard.
I
It's a
know
lizard.
Charizard's not a dragon.
I knew 1 wasn't a dragon. Pterodactyl.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, now who's not a water type?
Who's not a water type?
Right, who's not a water type?
Vaporeon is water automatic.
Yeah.
Seven.
Vaporeon and Blastoise definitely
7.
is.
Okay, you say 7.
Puke Mewtwo.
You still always say that shit.
Puke.
I don't know what
and,
is.
and
What is
Pincurchin?
9?
And Pincurchin.
What is 9?
9 is a it's an anchor.
Is 10 a Kung Fu a Pokemon version of Poe?
So 10
Something,
could be
yeah.
a water version.
Yeah, 10 could be.
I don't know.
10 could be.
I remember that. 10 could
Just
be
bank your
fi-
numbers. Just bank your numbers, and I'll tell you.
Okay. I'm going to say Puke Mewtwo. It's not.
Which one is Pum 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 Pum?
Puke Mewtwo is 7.
I'm gonna go 7.
7. Why you saying name like that?
There's 4. That's not. There's 4. That's not.
All right.
Water. So Puke Mewtwo and this one here. This one looks electric.
Okay.
No, that's some kind of fishy shit. So it's 7, 10.
You want to bank on 7 and 10? Okay.
and 9.
7, 10.
No,
9.
10 is definitely a water. He could be a water.
Could be. I'm
Because
going.
You can pick him as a water.
What do you
So
mean?
when you pick him, you get to choose one or the other.
I'm old.
Whenever you pick that one, that water could be a
I'm
water
out the game,
one.
baby.
So 10 is not.
That part.
I'm
10 is out of the game.
I'm out the game.
So
No. I'm old. I don't know
right.
what the fuck you're
10.
talking about.
I'm gonna say 7
Okay.
9 is a sea.
And 4.
3 is a seahorse.
butt cheek mouth right here.
That's a sea urchin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
That's a sea
It is a
urchin.
sea urchin. It is water.
It is
Yeah,
a
you're
sea
right.
urchin.
So
Puking
7,
Milking is sticking with this.
7 and 2. Nope. It got fin shit.
Okay.
It got fin shit.
Yeah.
If it has fin shit and it's not a walk Pokemon, I'm throwing you out my house.
All right. So let's go. 7.
Throwing you out right
So
now.
which ones is it?
I'm going 7 and that version of 10. I'm going with 10. Damn it.
All
Which
right.
one's not?
So the ones that are not dragon are 3.
The ones that are not waters.
Dragon.
Not water. Not dragon. Water. 3, 4, 5.
It's a fucking seahorse.
9.
3, 4,
It's
5.
It's a sea
3,
urchin.
4, 5, and 9.
3, 4, 5, and 9.
Get out of my house, bro.
Pinkirchin
Pinkirchin
is
an
water.
electric.
What is
Pinkirchin
this?
is water, yes.
Pinkirchin's electric.
Pinkirchin hangs out with Pyukyu. When you find a Pyukyu, you find a Pinkirchin.
Pinkirchin.
How am I supposed to know that at 40?
It's
What?
fine.
So butt cheek mouth hangs out with
Yes.
crazy.
dickhead.
Yes.
That's
yes.
crazy.
Yes, but y'all know Garrett. Y'all didn't even choose Garrett or Stan.
Well,
He
we
not
know
a
that.
dragon or nothing.
We know
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
three right here is
1,
definitely
6,
waters.
8
Is water.
is water. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
10, I can
10
guarantee
is water.
you
10 is water. That specific one
It looks
is water
like
fighting.
Pope.
Okay.
It's water fighting. That specific one is water,
Water fighting. It's an avatar.
fighting.
Yeah, pretty
basically.
much. Fucking Korra.
Yeah.
Alright, so this one about to fuck with y'all. Who's not a flying type?
Oh. Shit.
Just because they have wings do not mean they fly.
Number
Oh,
4 is
4.
not. Number
4 is not a
Four
flying.
is not a flying type.
It don't got no wings.
Dodrio
4 and
was never flying.
4 and 9.
Let me see 9.
9? Caesar.
Scizor.
No. 4
No,
and
but
9.
if 9 isn't, then that means 3 isn't.
What about 6?
3 is. He got wings. You looking at it.
But he turns into him.
Wait, who turns into who?
Green
Turns into
3
9.
turns into 9. Red 9.
But that's an insect Pokemon. 3 is an insect.
3 turns into 9. Yes, he's right. He's true. 3 evolves into 9.
So if you can't be flying here and not flying
That's
here.
not true. You
Well,
can
that's a lie because
Right.
his starter is not
Remember
a
what
flying.
I said
Exactly.
in 9?
Exactly.
Just
I
because
said-
it has wings
I said
does not
4
mean
and
that
9,
it's a
damn it.
flying type.
4.
4 and 9.
4.
There's 4 here that's not flying, by the way. Again.
Shut
All right,
up.
I'm gonna go with you on that. 3, 9, 4, and
3, 9, 4.
this
And
is this
10.
Halucha? Is that Halucha bird?
No, that's his name is Decidueye.
Oh,
Decision why.
this is UI.
Decisions and why.
Oh, wait a minute. This
What is
fucking
that?
Togepi.
It's a-
Togekiss.
Togekiss.
That's not a flying.
You think it's not a flying?
I don't know, bro.
I told you bank on your number, and I'll tell you who's not a flying.
No. Yes.
I don't know. I know
bank on
4.
your-
I know
Definitely.
3, 9, and 4.
I'm gonna go with that.
Put your numbers in, and I'll tell
3,
you.
9, and 4. I know
You said
7 is definitely
3,
bird.
9, and 4.
Yeah, 1 and 7 the
3,
birds.
9, 4, and 6.
Before I say
Yeah,
anything,
3, 9, 4, and 6.
before I say anything, look at the cipher for 4.
Fuck no.
It's an ostrich.
Fuck no. Ostriches don't never fly. Fuck no.
Get out of here.
But anyway, the answers that are all flying is 1, 2, 3.
How is 1? It's in the air.
Right.
The only time you
Right.
see this
It was
thing
in the air.
No, I'm saying that are flying.
No,
That are
tell
flying.
us what
Stop
are.
That you
doing
don't
that
want
shit.
was flying?
Which one
That's
ain't
not
flying, nigga?
All
Tell
right,
us the
all right,
ones
not
that's
flying.
not.
All right, fine. Not flying. 5, 8.
Flygon's?
How is 8 not?
Oh no! You're right. Flygon's a dragon.
He's a dragon
Yeah,
ground.
but number
Flying.
Butterfree's always
Blood
flying.
poison.
No. Fucking Butterfree's are flying. Fuck.
He's blood
said
poison.
I gave his bitch ass fly before. No.
You can't fly on a Butterfree.
On red version, that's the fuck you
How
can.
does butterflies travel?
On red version, Butterfree could
But
get
that's not
fly.
a flying
Fuck
type, though.
that.
Yeah, he can
So
learn
which one
fly.
is it?
Bro,
Oh,
when
wait.
it fights and it does poison powder, it flies over you.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it's not a flying type, though.
You
Flying
need,
doesn't
you
always
need to
mean...
go to hell.
It's not me, it's the game!
You
It's
need to
not
go
me.
to hell.
Anyway,
Let's get our
fine.
asses out
The
of
ones
here.
that are not flying is 5, 8, 11, 6, and 6, 9, and 10.
What?
Damn.
The Diggs said, no, you can't. The Diggs in the room. My bad. Drop a ball for the Diggs.
Yo, what up, Diggs?
What's up, bro? He said 7 and 10. I think I'm not too sure. I think that was with the other one.
Right.
But he said 8, 4, and 6 for this one. 8 is a bug. 4 is the shit. This fucking Dodrio with the 3 heads that run fast as fuck.
Scyther is a flying.
And 6.
The YN takeover is gonna be some bullshit.
Yeah, you gotta
This is gonna be some bullshit.
This is gonna be some bullshit. This is a big ass dragon talking about he can fly, but that's a fucking dragon and he ain't flying.
You getting one tomorrow?
Yeah, I can get one tomorrow.
Text me before you do it. Huh?
Yeah, I got you.
Nigga say you can put HN Fly on Butterfree. Yes, bro, I know, bro. This is.
I told you, yes, you can put Fly on Butterfree, but that doesn't mean he can fly, bro.
No, fuck that.
But 11 is a fly.
Yeah.
11
is Venomoth.
11 is
That's not a flying type?
No.
Go
it's
home.
Bug. It's
Go the fuck home.
Get
Go home.
poison.
Get the fuck out of here.
Shit with wing ain't
That
a flying
shit is
type.
Venomoth.
Go the fuck home.
That's Venomoth. That's bullshit.
Get out of my face.
But you know what's crazy? Dodrio can learn flying.
What? Like what?
So,
With no wings, mind you.
niggas the fastest nigga on earth and still can fly. Get the fuck out.
Wait, hold on. Niggas with wings ain't a flying type. Niggas without wings is a flying type.
Bullshit.
How you gonna do flying moves with no wings?
Number one, you only seen the nigga in the air. Nowhere else. Only in the air. But he not a flying.
First time you see him, he was
outta here.
flying above, nigga.
The fuck out of here.
No, he can fly. The whole O can fly. He's fire flying. He can fly. Yes, he can fly.
No, fuck no. This is stupid.
But Venomoth can't.
What the fuck?
This is fucking stupid.
Oh my god.
Scyther is flying bug though. That's it. For
Chat,
everything.
this is some stupid ass shit
That,
right
you
here.
you literally actually pissed me off this time. like who does this type of shit?
Pokemon is stupid as fuck, bro. Like, this shit is
It is,
crazy.
but it's loved by everyone. It's loved by
Jesus
everyone.
Christ.
Chat, we gotta get out of here.
Yes,
we
it's bad outside. We gotta
travel
get them home
ban.
safely. Get them travel. What time is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all need to get going.
Yeah, it's 8:13.
Let's wrap it up. Anybody got anything final words that they got to say?
Yeah, you guys make sure you tune into
YN Takeover
YN
next week.
Takeover for next Sunday.
These young guys are hosting next week,
YNs
so it's not
are
us.
hosting,
I'm
not
coming with
us.
the bullshit too.
Not us. Her either. She will be here.
Yeah.
We will be here.
They'll be up front. We'll
But
be in
they'll
the back.
be in the front. We're gonna be in the back, and they're gonna host him, Freddie, and Ash. If we can get
Possibly Julius, if we can
possibly
arrange
we can
that.
get Julius, and we can get that going. So let's let you close. Let's see.
Say
Close
something.
it out.
Say something.
Say something for the people.
Just tune in and say I'm coming with the bullshit though.
Right.
I'm coming with it.
Creating the show.
W stream. Sorry, we gotta cut it short. We gotta get home.
Yeah, they gotta get them out of here. We gotta get them out of here.
Whole fact. Of course, you guys, like I always say, not a show. I mean, it's not a podcast. It's definitely a show. It's community. We all love y'all. Got to get out of here. So sorry. Make sure you tune in on the 1st of Sunday. 1st of March is a Sunday. YN Takeover. March 15th for the baby shower.
Mhm.
And Mr.
Just real
200.
quick, everybody tap in Golden Crush 200 on the Instagram, the TikTok, and the YouTube. Mainly the Instagram. All these posters and stuff is gonna go up there for y'all to catch up.
Yep.
Let's get them out of here.
If you want some merch, just make sure you go to GameLounge.live for this merch.
And
let's
we're
get on
gonna
out of here.
also put up the baby shower.
Oh, this again.
The list. What do you call that again?
The registry.
The
yes.
registry. So if you guys want to or not.